Hello there, and welcome to episode 31 of Trek Prime. Hope you all had a Merry Christmas, whatever holiday you were celebrating, and Happy New Year to come. This is our last video for 2018, isn't it?
Yep.
So anyway, tonight we're going to go back in time with the movies a little bit. This is Jeff's idea, and we are going to do... Yep, I bought my record out.
Star Trek the Motion Picture.
Yep, that's right. And this actually has something very special in it. The original poster.
Yeah.
And there's also some, I'm just showing you this is a little treat. It's got some pictures from the movie. And if you all remember these aliens were all really hyped for this movie.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of material, and they appeared as background characters in that one scene in the film, but they were really hyping those aliens.
Yeah. I mean, they made figures out of them, too.
Yeah, and we really didn't have much...
yeah,
they just... all these different aliens we never heard about, like... They
just had that one scene, the poor guys. I mean, they dressed them up and they put all that makeup on them, and that was the only part.
Yeah, they got a Kaiserite, which looks like a Mugato with a human face. They've got a Rigelian. They've got a Beetlejuicean.
Beetlejuice.
Right there.
Yeah.
So he's from the Beetlejuice system. Amzarite, which looks like something out of the Twilight Zone, actually.
Yeah.
Another Beetlegoosian who's dressed in a kimono there. And a shaman's priest from Orion's planet.
Oh.
I don't know who Orion is. Any relation to Ripley? Is in Ripley's Pleasure Planet?
Oh, I don't know. I would have thought that.
All these aliens who have these cultures, and I wonder if that was all kind of residue from Phase 2.
It might have been. It might have been.
And the Autorans, so these are stories we could be talking about. I would love to do stories about all these aliens and what their story is and what they were doing on the Enterprise and what was happening there. Was there some sort of ambassadorial event they were going to do? And
yeah, because if you look, they weren't wearing Starfleet uniforms. They're wearing...
going to a conference or something.
Yeah.
Maybe it was another Babel conference we didn't see because, and of
maybe
course...
it was something they were going to do in an episode of Phase 2 and it just never...
Right, exactly. And here's the crew in the uniforms that I really like. Thank you very much. I know a lot of people don't like these, but I really... Going from TOS to these, I thought it was a great transition. We talked about that.
Yeah.
So that's my soundtrack album, and it's actually not warped. It's in pretty good shape. And it has that extra 5 minutes of the Ilias theme that you'll hear at the beginning of the special longer version of this movie on VHS and DVD and Blu-ray. So if you know about that, they have that blank screen. Now they have stars coming at you on it. But
yeah.
So anyway, okay, this movie came out in late 1979.
Yeah.
And... why don't I let you start this one out, because we've actually been kind of getting to this one in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons I wanted to get to it is because of all the movies that we discussed up to this point, the motion picture really doesn't attach itself to the other 5 movies that came after.
The interesting part, it's kind of its own thing.
That's right.
It's not part of that trilogy of 2 through 4.
Yeah.
Or whatever 5 and 6 were. It was it stood out.
That's right.
The look was different.
Yep. And it was one of those films, oddly enough, that that really, I mean, it made a lot of money. It was one of the 6 films that made the most out of all the other films, was that one. But yet it's the most criticized, I think, of all the films, even more than Star Trek V, to believe it or not. I think a lot of people give it a pass, Star Trek V, but when it comes to the first movie, you hear a lot of disappointment from both the actors and the fans. A lot of the actors felt like they weren't even in character a lot of times in the movie, and they were just gawking at the view screen or saying repetitive things like, unknown or something like that, and they felt the dialogue wasn't very, very well written or something like that. At the same time, there was a great deal of, chaos involved with the filming of this feature, because they were changing the script as they were filming it. There was rewrites being made. Yeah, and the director was like pulling the hair out of his head because, he said it was the worst film. Robert Wise, yeah, he said it was the worst film he ever worked on because of all the arm twisting and and all this interference, and they couldn't finish the shooting at times. So they were always in danger of not being able to get this movie out at the time Paramount wanted it. And so, yeah, I mean, there was, of course, there was a lot going on even before this movie came out, where they were just debating whether or not they should start another TV show. But
Right, because of the first stirrings of what became the United Paramount Network.
yeah,
They were trying to do that, and it wasn't a cable thing, man. It was actually going to be a TV network like NBC, ABC for free.
that's right.
And they were going to do a show called Star Trek Phase 2, which this was supposed to be the pilot to. What was it called? In My Image?
And by image, yeah.
Except the ending would have obviously been quite a bit different, but it was similar kind of story. And they decided to go with a motion picture instead, and I believe, didn't they approach Steven Spielberg and Ray Bradbury at one point to try to do this?
Yeah, they actually, George Lucas too. I mean, they wanted to get some of the big names that were out there in science fiction at the time.
You made a point, and I know we don't want to bring Star Wars into this a lot, but we can bring it in here just a little bit. You made a point the other day about this movie's success in relation to Star Wars, and I kind of wanted to bring that up a little bit because it was a good point you made. But I'll let you make that point.
Yeah. Yeah, the point I was making was that, had Star Wars not come out at the year that it did, and we just had Star Trek: The Motion Picture, I think audiences would have said that this, the first Star Trek movie would have been the new raising of the bar, as it were, to the quality and the kinds of science fiction that would have came after it. But Star Wars had kind of beat them to the punch by coming out with their movie first, which was what, in 77, I think it came out. Yeah. So
they call it now.
2 years before, so they come out with that, and that got all the attention. So audiences at that point were always looking for something Star Wars-ish,
right? And then
science fiction in the films.
I think by the time you got to the motion picture of Star Trek 2, it had already been announced that we're going to do Empire Strikes Back, so they were kind of more looking forward to that. And Star Trek was a show from the TVs in the 60s. They had been in syndication for most of the 70s and had been very successful. But it was kind of like seen as a TV adaptation, sort of, with characters everybody kind of knew, where Star Wars was a totally new thing made for cinema.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe that affected it too. The idea this was a rebooting of a TV show, essentially.
Yeah.
It's not a reboot in the modern kind. They weren't trying to totally redo it. It extended from the original show.
Yeah.
Which brings me up to the first thing. Now, obviously, being a movie, they wanted to make it look very different from the original show. And I've often wondered what would have happened if the refit of the original Enterprise had been, shall we say, lighter?
Yeah, closer to the TOS version.
Right, that like the Mike Minor version they were going to use for Phase 2, something closer to that.
Yeah. Because
that brings up something we've been debating a long time. The Enterprise, as it appeared on TOS, looks more like this.
Yeah. And
that's it in the motion picture. Now, if you put the two side by side, these are smaller models. Are these, in fact, the same ship? And the reason I wanted to mention that is because in the movie, Will Decker, who I'm assuming is the son of
Matt Decker,
Captain Decker, Matt Decker from the original series. I'm assuming it's the son.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It might be younger brother, but I'm assuming son.
No, it's his son. Yeah.
Okay, he's captain, and he's supposed to be captain of this newly refitted Enterprise. Yet a syndrome that is hearing a lot about this movie occurs right toward the beginning. Kirk decides that he's going to negotiate with Admiral Nagora to take over the Enterprise captaincy again from right under Decker without him knowing about it. And he goes and tells him personally.
Yeah. Now, this is coming from a man that supposedly was friends with this guy.
Yeah, and that was kind of uncool, I mean. And so, I mean, Decker was unhappy about it, but he got Kirk's flip because he said,
now, if you're meeting Captain Kirk for the first time in this movie, you would have hated his guts right from the beginning.
Yeah, exactly. He was kind of a jerk in most of this movie, to be honest with you, toward Decker especially.
Yeah.
But luckily when Bones came on the ship, I mean, I know we're going all this here, he kind of made it clear this is an obsession and that you need the Enterprise and that you can't be away from it. So everybody knew it, and he would do anything to get it.
Yeah.
Almost like it was a narcotic.
Yeah.
And to be honest, Decker, he kind of dutifully went along with it through most of the movie, even though he kept getting promoted and demoted whenever Kirk wanted him to be.
Yeah.
He got doubled up as science officer until Spock just appeared on the ship, and he just assumed the role, and Decker was, again, well, he gladly pushed out because he knew that, okay, Spock is obviously the more experienced guy, so.
Yeah.
So, okay, they refit the Enterprise. Now, one thing I wanted to ask, because this is a question a lot of people ask, just how far away from the original series was this? Because Kirk had been told by Decker that he had not logged a single star hour in 2.5 years, so it had to be over 2.5 years.
Hmm.
They spent 18 months refitting the ship, which is not quite 2 years.
No.
So I've heard some say it's about 3 years, some 5.
No, it wasn't 5. Well, you know, if they have the chronology that was written by Michael Okuda, that's considered canon. And in the canon version, it says that it was 2.5 years since they came back from their 5-year mission. So, and when he came back, he was given the promotion to admiral, and that's where he spent, you know, that time, you know, before Star Trek: The Motion Picture, is working on Earth. And you know, of course, Decker was given that the reins of that ship because, you know, basically he knew about the refit and he was there to refit it and everything every step of the way. So he knew the ship inside and out from where it was to where it became. So him having the rank of captain, being there from day one, having that ship under his thumb, basically, working with Scotty to get it refitted and everything like that. And then this emergency comes around and his old buddy comes back and says, well, I'm taking over the center seat, Will. You know, that's like saying, well, I had confidence in you 2.5 years ago to captain the ship, but now I'm coming back and I'm taking over. You know,
yeah, it was very micromanaging. It was very micromanaging, wasn't it? You know, it's
yes. Yeah, and I think a lot of Star Trek fans that watched it, a lot of them got pretty irked by that, by William Shatner's portrayal of Kirk in that movie. However, the same thing, you know, about Kirk is that if you go back into the TOS episodes and you look at Kirk's obsession with his command,
right, that's not inconsistent.
From the very beginning, he always put his ship ahead of his own personal life, in fact. And so to him, maybe this obsession with command, it's not so much an obsession with the Enterprise, it's just his obsession with command, you know, is what drives him. He wants to be out there in space. He wants to be in command. He wants to explore. I mean, that's his driving force. That's his you know, his talent. You know, it's not to be the guy behind the scene directing, you know, everybody else to do their job. He's the one that's going to be sitting in the center chair as it's happening.
That behind the scenes job will be a job more suited to Picard in a lot of ways. He's the explorer, but he could kind of do the administrative stuff too because he has that diplomacy.
Yeah,
Kirk is more of an adventurer.
Yeah, but he's bored to tears with that job, and he doesn't get to see what as things are happening. But he wants to be there, you know, in case things do go wrong. He can be there right on hand to do this stuff. So I thought, you know, when a person gets command of a starship, you know, like that, and he's promoted to captain, I mean, Will Decker, you know, he had to have earned his bones. I mean, remember you were saying if they were friends, and Kirk and him had to know each other pretty well in that time before he became captain of the ship, right? So I mean, it's like they weren't strangers. They knew each other's capabilities.
I'm not sure, but would you say that Decker in the motion picture era was roughly the same age Kirk was when he got command of the Enterprise?
Well, they always said Kirk was the youngest at the time.
Because Decker didn't seem like an old guy. He seemed like a mid-30ish kind of person.
Yeah, he looked like he was probably in his mid to late 30s, yeah, somewhere around there.
So he was around Kirk's age when he first got command of the Enterprise.
So how much? I mean, Kirk was green as they could come when he took command of the Enterprise, right? So, but they said, oh, he was really smart and he earned his way up to the ranks. So does that mean Decker didn't?
Well, seemed to know that ship well in so many sequences of the ship. So I know we're going to go out of order with this, but one interesting starting point, I'll start right from the beginning, is the Klingons. In this movie, their ships get a refit. They go from the D7s to the
Katinga class.
Bumpier Katinga class. They're the same ship, but it's like the refit Enterprise. It's like they refitted the D7s.
Yeah.
To make them a little more movie-ish.
And I gotta say that opening scene though, where they got the camera panning right when the ship goes under and it twists around. I mean, that made me dizzy in the theater when I seen that.
Cool.
I was like,
Yeah, I mean, that's a unique effect. I do like when they do that. I mean, you do see in the theater, but I do like that effect. It gives you a sense of direction of where they're going. And,
yeah. I mean, you were the probe. The probe that was watching all this. You were the probe. You were floating above these ships as they were passing under you.
Now that I think about it, that's a very Star Wars technique.
It is.
Because when you look at Star Wars, when you're fighting in the X-wings, they're showing you the point of view of Luke and the people in the X-wings fighting the Death Star.
That's right.
It's like you're in the spaceship, and that gave you the point of view of V'ger.
Yeah.
Seeing these, well, it's called Intruder in the beginning. We don't know the name of the creature, but it's called an Intruder for like the first hour of the movie. But anyway, this cloud thing, which I guess was V'ger. But anyway, so yeah, and when we see the Klingons inside, I can imagine the shock of people saying, "Those aren't Klingons."
Yeah.
Here we go again now. They're doing the same thing, but it's like, these aren't Klingons. They have ridges on their heads.
They look like they got cancer on their heads. It's like, what is this? All these knobs and everything.
Years later, I realized there was no Klingon language set up, so they're basically just speaking very good sounding gibberish. I mean, I was trying to do it when I looked at the Blu-ray without the subtitles, and they're just basically most of the time just barking, kind of aimlessly with like monosyllabic phrases, but no language really written out.
Yeah. And Mark Leonard, who was playing the Klingon at that time,
right, he was playing the captain of the Amar, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, and I didn't even realize it was him until the credits at the end, and I was like, he was in there. Who was he? And it said the Klingon captain, and I was like, I'll be damned. He's like one of the few actors that actually played a Romulan, a Klingon, and a Vulcan. In Star Trek.
Romulans and with Vulcans, same makeup, so.
Yeah, so.
Anyway, it was really a difference. So he's played all the aliens, basically, except Tellarite. But anyway, and Andorian, but he's played all the main aliens.
Yeah.
But anyway, so here's the thing I wanted to mention about these Klingons in the motion picture. Of course, they're an earlier version of what we've seen in Klingon since then. The armor and the head ridges and even the behavior. But the thing about these Klingons, though, do you think there's any truth to the fact this is the way they really wanted to do it but couldn't for budget reasons in TOS? Or do you think that what they decided to do with the Klingons is make them more fanciful for the movie to kind of use effects?
Right. I think I remember reading somewhere, and it was probably in a behind the scenes book about the original series, and I think they wanted to do more makeup on the Klingons than they actually got. Because if you remember, all they did was like put this little twigs here, I guess you'd call it, for a beard and a mustache. I always laugh because it looked like they took ripped stuff off a broom and they just glued it on.
Yeah, a little hair piece.
Paint it black or something. So it looked always cheesy, but then I find out that no, they actually wanted to go a little bit further by, like what they did with Spock. They gave him ears. They wanted to do something like that with them, some kind of a sculpt on their head a little bit, and they didn't have the money to do it. So they just,
I mean, it would have been nice. We know by now, according to Enterprise, but it would have been kind of cool, in TNG, in motion picture, if they'd kind of inserted something in there about why the Klingons have been different. I don't know how they could have done it, but it would have been interesting, or at least one of the movies.
Yeah.
Kind of, but they kept going on with that one for years and tried to pretend that look didn't happen.
Yeah.
And they never went back to the TOS and gave them ridges with CGI or anything. So.
Yeah, thank God they didn't do that.
Could have, but no, they didn't. They had to have Enterprise to explain why that happened and.
Yeah.
Whatever, because after Star Trek.
How many Star Trek fans out there actually accept that story as being the reason why the Klingons look different from the.
Yeah, I guess it was on TV, so it's canon.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I get this feeling that some people are like, I don't know. I don't like this idea.
Well, we're not talking about Enterprise tonight, thankfully. That's going to get into a rabbit hole. We get into that one. So, yeah. I mean, I actually like Enterprise, but man, that starts to get a little sketchy there with some history. So,
yeah. But
Klingons notwithstanding, there's other stuff in there. But anyway, with the motion picture, then we get, and the other thing about the motion picture, and even my father mentioned this. Sometimes he thinks Star Trek in general is a little cheesy because of all the kind of theatrics of Shatner, mostly. But the funny thing is, he loves William Shatner as just a character, as a person. He finds him very amusing, which I don't think Shatner is intending to do, but he finds Shatner very amusing in a blowhardish kind of way. Kind of an appreciation of campiness. But, anyway, but he loves the motion picture very genuinely because he's a big fan of 2001: A Space Odyssey. And now that I think about it, that movie shares a lot of similar characteristics.
Yeah.
In the sense it's very operatic. A lot of it is just the majesty of space, really.
Yeah.
The motion picture. The dialogue is fairly minimal.
Yeah.
There's a lot of visuals, and I get that's probably why a lot of people think it's an effects show.
Yeah.
But it's not an effects show in the modern standard. And yes, I can include the Kelvin universe in that, thank you. I know that's not what we're doing, but the idea of let's just blow everything up and have lights flaring around everywhere.
Yeah.
This movie basically shows spaceships and space stations and spacesuits and entities and wormholes, and we just get to kind of see space and things happening in space.
Yeah.
Rather than let's go out and find the most exciting thing around you. So it seems like you're more in space.
Yeah.
Like in that 25th anniversary thing, one of the people talking about Star Trek said Star Trek universe seems like it's full of places to go and people to see, where real space is cold, dark, and incredibly lonely.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a little bit of that latter thing in the motion picture. A lot of it seemed a little lonely. A lot of it seemed a little empty and open and dark. It seemed like they were more actually in space to me. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. It had that we're definitely out in space feel. You saw a lot of things floating in space.
Mm-hmm.
And one example was Epsilon 9, which it took me years to realize because they're showing it in a certain angle,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually a totally flat thing.
That's right.
I thought Epsilon 9 was like an up.
Yeah, they were showing
it at that angle, but it's actually totally flat.
In space, you don't know. I mean, it's just, there's no...
Go up and down in space, so...
Yeah.
But it looked like it was a... When I used to draw Epsilon 9, I would draw it as if it was this huge tower. And it isn't. It's a totally flat antenna type thing with a little space.
Yep.
It's like, would you say that was like a version of a subspace relay they had in...
Yeah, actually, you're right. I think it probably was an early version of, so that way, because if you remember at the beginning, you could hear all this comm traffic coming and going. And I think what it is they relay everything that's like an operator, basically.
That's you feel weird because you hear the background scoring and you hear all these people 199499999 talking and all this stuff, and this little guy in a spacesuit. It seems more like a NASA mission control thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the thing I like about motion picture. It feels more like real space at that time.
Yeah.
Where in TOS you get one person talking on one channel, and Epsilon 9 like you have 4 or 5 people trying to talk to each other and repeating, and
yeah,
it's like a chaotic thing for a minute. There's music playing and spaceships. You feel like you're in space, like you're around a bunch of people just getting all this. It's like you won't even getting messages in and comm traffic.
Yep.
I mean, they do that in a lot of movies now. You hear them crowding all this dialogue, like those movies, maybe military movies, and they crowd all these messages in at the beginning and they put them all together.
Yep.
Kind of has that vibe about it. But that seems like, they have that music, 999494917, all these numbers. Like, whoa, there's a lot going on. Then they get to this thing where they're talking about observing the AMAR.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, we know nothing about motion picture. It's its own thing, but it's sort of its own universe in a way, isn't it? It doesn't feel like the other movies.
No, it doesn't.
Number one, because they're not wearing those red things.
Yeah.
Their uniforms, and what I love about the motion picture, there's something about it that feels like it happened like not too far after TOS.
Hmm.
And I was observing it, and is it me or does that show, that motion picture, is there a slight look about it that's closer to the vibe of Space 1999 or Logan's Run?
Hmm.
I mean, the look of it. When I say that, I mean, it's much more, I wouldn't say 1979, but much more comfortable. Everything has a very leisurely quality.
Well, when it looks like that, like what you said, comfortable, leisurely, to me, that's the kind of look you want for something futuristic.
Right, exactly. And I say that,
you don't want it to feel claustrophobic and dark. And
TOS felt like they were kind of like, they were comfortable, but it was always kind of like worker clothes.
I mean, you look at the inside of this NASA space shuttle when they had that out. The inside of that thing, even though it was just a space shuttle, it had room, it had comforts in it. It was bright. It wasn't dim, dark, cramped, or like a submarine.
Motion picture is like its own little world where it's a Star Trek universe we never really saw much of again.
Yeah.
I mean, those little things that they wear, and you said those were actually, as illustrated in a book or something, those were actually life support monitors.
Yeah.
I always thought they were some sort of device, like in the Next Generation, they're going to pull it out and make a phaser or a tricorder out or something. Like all these things inside, like a toolkit or something. But it's actually a sensor.
Yeah, it's monitoring their biofunctions, and that makes it easier for sickbay to keep track of the crew and know when, if there's something wrong with them or something like that. So,
And I mean, of course, the Next Generation,
yeah,
you know,
all that's done on a communicator
Merry
badge.
Christmas from You, by the way,
Yeah.
is done with these things. This is my new magnetic TNG
Yeah.
communicator, which I'm not wearing tonight because when I wear it, I feel like Troy. Wearing this color. I just wanted to mention that. I was going to put that on for the video, but I thought, I look like Troy, one of those weird outfits she wore in TNG. So I just don't want to look like season 4 or 5 Troy, whatever.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, we'll deal with that in the new year, my outfit. So anyway, no. But as far as motion picture, yeah. So you have this little world where everybody has a different color, and there's all these different variants. There's blue, there's white, and there's this beigey colored.
I mean, even the Klingon bridge in that movie was.
Oh yes, the Amar's bridge.
A whole lot better.
I love that bridge.
Appearance than any other.
That is an amazing bridge. It's got these nice struts and there's areas in the back that are kind of in alcoves and.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like something futuristic, not like these, dingy, rusty-looking contraptions they build for the bridges these days now for Klingon ships. I mean, this one actually looked functional. It looked, like it was doing things because you had the stations were swiveling like that, like they were tracking V'ger as the ships was moving.
Right, exactly. Where newer Klingon ships, you always get the sense they're falling apart and they're not being maintained. And there's somebody has these giant factories with smoke coming out of them. And the Amar, it's only marginally kind of misty, but it doesn't look like some sort of welding factory. It doesn't look like you're in a steel mill. Yeah. And most Klingon ships have that, like, everything's like 100 years old, like they haven't maintained it. Maybe all these new ships that have 100-year-old bridges, and this looks like a brand new bridge they'd set up. Yeah. So I always loved that Amar bridge. I wish they'd extended more on that in other Klingon ships. Yeah. Because it looked like the bridge of a really futuristic attack ship. It really had that much more advanced sensors and tactical information. You could see that it was a better design. I always loved that Amar bridge. Yeah. As in TOS, whenever you saw a Klingon, they were standing in front of some screen and people were running around behind it, and that was the bridge. Yeah. You get the impression that the captain or the commander was in some little alcove in front, and there were all these things in the back people were doing. And this looked like actual bridge they had on this one. Like you said, futuristic. Yeah. So basically, So V'ger basically takes this Amar, and you think it's being destroyed, but as we find out, it isn't. V'ger doesn't really destroy anything. It just processes it into data. Like a download. Yeah. Except you can't re-upload it, I guess. We'll talk about that a little later. So V'ger's a one-way download. Yeah. Not very practical, but it was a work after a fashion. And I wanted to bring this up because I don't like to compare things, but we have to face it. There's a comparison. If you look at this movie literally, it resembles the TOS episode of The Changeling to a certain degree. Yeah. This hybrid life form that's going after its creator. And as you just pointed out, Kirk didn't have to make a flamboyant speech to get V'ger. He had to go through a lot more to deal with V'ger because there was more complexity, I guess. So
they still had this thing with what we saw in Changeling about the 90 photon torpedoes, and in V'ger on the motion picture, the Enterprise gets hit by one of the bolts, and it doesn't get absorbed into the the first shot.
I wonder how powerful were those cons. Could they just take lots of energy and
that had to be in a serious shield upgrade to go from that to taking 90 photon torpedoes to a shield upgrade where they can actually take a hit from V'ger.
Now, can I skip the crowd? I want to go back to the crowd scene in the film, but one scene I want to cover that reminds me of that was the wormhole scene. Yeah. Which is a trip. Because first of all, they this big orange wormhole appears in front of them, and everything turns psychedelic. Yeah. So color lights on the bridge, and everybody.
It seems like everybody's traveling at warp speed. Then
and they're all like
color streaking,
jumping around. It's like, oh, this is a trip on LSD or something. It's like they were all high or something. So then Kirk wants to fire a phaser. So Decker's like, no, delay that phaser order. Yeah, I'm doing it exactly. Everybody's all trippy in this, and they're all jumping around on the bridge with all these warp things coming out of them, and they're about to blast off. And then they're all talking like robots, like, it's all crazy. So then they decide to fire photon torpedoes at the asteroid.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Kirk is mad at Decker after taking his command away. And Decker has to explain to him, no, it's really your fault because we channel phaser power through the main engine, so when the engines go down, the phasers stop.
Yeah.
So he's like, yeah, you don't know what you're doing.
The funny thing is it was a modification that Kirk himself suggested before he gave command over to...
Man, Kirk forgot that. It's weird.
Yeah.
It's like, where do you sleep on the watch?
Yeah.
Decker was in the, he said, oh, well, you're in the right then. I was like, yeah, Kirk's in the right. He knows this better. You know, it's like, Kirk, what's wrong with you? You're so obsessed with the command you don't even know your own ship anymore? Jeez.
Yeah. It's like, how dare you try to save my ship, you know? But, you know, he realized how dumb he was, but then, you know, he kind of got back in his face again about, oh, stop competing with me. You know,
and
it's
then
like...
both of them tell him, you're the one competing.
Yeah.
You know, Decker is in the right to save your ass on this thing, and you're sitting there worrying about him competing with you.
I mean, we've seen Kirk obsessed, you know, especially in TOS when he was going after that stupid cloud thing there, remember?
Yeah, we call that obsession because Kirk was losing his control then.
So we know he's capable of that, but the thing of it is that, you know, to take it out on your friend, I mean, a guy that he's supposedly friends with and stuff, and treating him like that, I mean, that's, I don't know.
Yeah, just, you know, people call it Kirk as a jerk syndrome. You know, like the animated episode where they put that sign on the back of Kirk.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he was kind of a jerk to Decker through most of this. So I just wanted to mention that because that was an example of how they redid this ship, that they channeled the power differently.
Yeah.
And it was, and like he said, it's a modification you suggested.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even know your own ship.
Yeah.
Because you figure if the guy had been on it for 5 years on a mission, he'd know what needed to go on there, what they should do and what they should not do. You know?
Yeah.
So it's like, you don't even know what you did, really. So let's go back to the crowd scene. Remember those aliens you saw a little bit ago? They're scattered throughout that crowd.
Yeah, everywhere, yeah.
And they're watching Epsilon 9. And, you know, it's funny how much adulting is going on.
Yeah.
Because they're basically watching Epsilon 9 be absorbed into V'ger right on their screen. They're all sitting there. You know, I would have been like,
well, okay.
I would have been freaked out about that.
Here's the thing.
Starfleet people. I get they're trained for this.
Well, I know, but here's the thing that they don't really go too deep into in that movie. But if you listen very closely to what was being said in the background, they were having crew replacements, remember? Do you remember that phrase?
Yes.
Okay. What happened is after they saw that, and some people decided, I don't want to stay on the ship, you know, I want to leave. So Kirk had to keep the Enterprise there so they could get crew members to replace the ones that had left after he gave that briefing. And it's spelled out clearly in the book version of that, but it's not really stated too well in the movie.
Right, because when you see V'ger being absorbed, you hear people like, oh.
Everybody just thought this was it. This is the end of days.
You kind of hear them in the background acting a little shocked. When they look at them, they're like, you know, I would have had more mouths agaped.
Yeah.
Like I would have been like that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I say, you know, the motion picture wasn't dull. There was definite kind of almost horror elements in it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing it as a sci-fi film, but they're thinking of this like, oh my God, this has just been destroyed. I don't want to stay here, like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a guy on the bridge. I don't even know if he had a name. He was this kind of had pale skin and kind of puffy hair.
Yeah, he had a line. He had like one line.
He had one line, and he didn't seem to stick around.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was an alien or.
Yeah.
I don't know who that character was.
I don't think he stuck around. I think he was probably one of those that left after that.
You know, all these people. There was a guy. I think it was Delton in there.
Yeah.
There was the shaven head. I don't know who that was.
Yeah.
Some kind of Telly Savalas looking character, and then there was. Was all tanned up, and then all these people wearing these little kimonos and stuff, and these aliens. All those aliens you saw back there were in that scene.
Yeah.
Wasn't Jimmy Doohan's son part of that too?
Was he? I don't know if he was or not.
One of them was part of that crowd, but
there was a lot of.
That was like half the crew, wasn't it, in that room?
I think that was probably just about everybody. And you know, the thing about it is for years I thought that set was representative of the secondary hull at the bottom, where you see those two great big windows on either side, you know, where obviously.
You know that's what that was?
I thought that's where it was, but it's not. That set is actually up on the rear of the saucer section, where you got those big square windows, 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom.
Oh, so that area is kind of big.
So yes, that section, it goes way in there. It covers the whole part. That's actually where they were at. And there, it wasn't, because if you look at the windows, you have to go by the windows. You could see one of the nacelles, the front of the nacelles in the window. And it's like, well, that can't be at the bottom if
Was
they're
that
right.
also where you observed Spock's shuttle coming in?
No, that was actually at the rear of the bridge where they have those great big, the crew, the officers' lounge is what they call it. It sits just below that, the deck one. You could see it. If you look at the model, you'll see those big windows are in the back behind the bridge.
You mean these ones right here?
Yeah, that's right where you see it. Yeah.
So by the way, just to let you know, where was that crowd scene on this ship?
It's right next to the impulse drive on the starboard side.
Oh, these?
Nope, the other side.
That one?
Yeah, right there on that side of the ship.
So that's where that crowd scene was?
Yeah, it was right there.
It was in this section?
Yep, right in there.
Section of the ship right there.
Yep.
Wow. And now, if I recall, one thing you mentioned that I didn't realize, because I haven't looked at the schematics in a while, engineering on this ship is actually right about there, right?
Yep, right in the back.
And all the stuff goes down into the engine thing here, but the main engineering is right here.
Yep.
On this ship, they moved it in there.
All the way down there.
Which is where it stayed, as far as I know. I never knew it was in the saucer in the original show.
Yeah.
But anyway, so yeah. So basically, again, we go back to the debate. Was this thing the actual original Connie at all?
By the time they stripped it down, I mean, I bet there was very little even of the mainframe left. I mean, they just gutted that sucker.
I gotta tell you, I love the way this inside and outside too looks in the motion picture. Very silvery, very metallic, very bright, very futuristic.
Yep.
A place you wouldn't mind being for 5 years. As a matter of fact, not that different from TOS in a way. Very similar lit.
Yeah.
Only more futuristic and more curved. You know?
Yeah, because in TOS it had more colors like yellows and greens and reds.
It was more angular. Everything was kind of more angular.
This one was smoother on the edges, and the color palette was just kind of gray, and the panels were broken up into smaller stations instead of just this one long bar of bridge. Goes all the way around the sun.
And unlike in TOS, one side wasn't empty.
That's right.
Because in TOS, it was always one side where nobody was doing anything. And then, in this one, everything had a purpose. And Chekhov had this little alcove in the corner, which was odd, but they put it in anyway, so.
It kind of is in an odd spot, because if you actually look at the top view of the bridge, his alcove doesn't even sit straight ahead. It just kind of sits angular to the viewer, And if you're trying to target something, I mean, wouldn't that be kind of visually confusing if you're trying to target something dead on?
When I was a little kid, I got to admit, I always had this little feeling that Chekhov was in there at like a video arcade machine.
It does look like
he was in there playing Pac-Man or something,
It reminds me of that. Remember the Tron arcade game?
It reminds me of the little Tron thing they have.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like that. It's like really enclosed, so that way you get that stupid ultraviolet light reflecting off. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Chekhov in there, and then show him playing Gallagher or something.
Yeah.
I can remember who was on Gallagher before.
I mean, they gave him a joystick. I mean, you saw it when in Star Trek 2, where you had that panel lifts up and a joystick falls out, and he just pushes a button on it to fire the.
That's where they got it from Insurrection, with a little joystick. I'm just. I mean, I wonder if there's a little place you can just play video games. It's like a video game thing. Like you see in the old Dream Machine up here in Bangor, you just sit there and play video. That's the whole point. That it was supposed to be arcade-like and in with the newer looks of the 70s.
Yeah.
Because in 79, isn't that when those arcade things kind of just started to happen?
Yeah, it was right around that time.
Toward the end of the 79, 80, when they started to have those. So it went along with the 70s. And like I said, I just remember something. The motion picture is really the only new Star Trek live action we really had in the 70s, wasn't it? Because we had TOS in syndication. We had the animated show, which was just a TOS cartoon.
Yep. And
that was the only real 70s era thing we had for Star Trek, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where it had 70s kind of a look to it.
Yeah.
Only futuristic.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting how every generation looks at the future a little differently?
Yeah, and the funny thing about looking at the future from whatever decade you're in, how someone can say, well, that's that looks so 70ish. I'm thinking, well, look, let me just grab somebody who's been living in on a shell for the last 50 years and put them in front of Star Trek the Motion Picture and ask them, what era do you think this came from? Not a single one of them is going to say, oh, this is from the 60s or this is from the 70s. How can you say something that's made in the future or are supposed to represent a future actually looks like it came from a certain era, unless you lived in that era.
Except for Troy's outfit when Beam's on board.
Yeah.
That outfit is more than a little disco. I will say that. It had the chains, and it looked very John Travolta. That was the only place I ever saw this is really 70s.
Yeah. But that was like his civilian outfit.
Right, it almost looked like they beat him off the dance floor. I got to be honest.
Yeah. But like I said, that wasn't really the uniform. That was just a civilian outfit.
Yeah, I know. It looked very civilian disco. Yeah. It really screamed disco to me. That was the only time I ever saw that.
Remember, he had this great big necklace that he had.
Right, that was very John Travolta to me, that whole outfit.
Yeah.
That was the only time I ever saw it scream 70s.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, other than that, when he beamed out, I'm thinking Staying Alive when I saw that. That was the only time I think, yeah, beat me off the dance floor.
That would have been funny as hell.
I was going to start playing disco and beat me up. But, you know, like I said, that was, that might have been something DeForest Kelly had at that time. Because that was a very leisure suity looking thing. And, but other than that, they didn't. I mean,
you would figure he would have got beamed up wearing blue jeans or something because he's from the South, right? I mean, he talks about
his disco outfit.
And he beams up in something that looks dressy and kind of 70-ish, and it's like
I said, it's more of a leisure suit, like a leisure suit or a disco thing.
Pretty big beard, like he came out of the mountains, like Grizzly Adams.
the Grizzly Adams beard.
Yeah, so why wasn't he wearing like a plaid shirt with suspenders and blue jeans or something?
You think he'd be on board in more of a Dukes of Hazzard clothes, like a plaid shirt and a little cowboy hat?
Dukes of Hazzard.
I'm just a good old boy, just beaming up, looking like.
Oh boy!
Yeah, that would have suited Bones really well. That Dukes of Hazzard.
Yeah. I guess
they like disco outfits.
They forgot where he was from. This guy's not from the city. He's from the South. He's from Georgia or something.
And the ironic thing is, I could totally see Kirk of that time in a disco outfit.
Kirk, yeah,
I could totally see him more like a leisure suit kind of guy.
Yeah, I don't know.
But Bones, all those chains and stuff, just didn't seem like his character.
The thing is, Kirk says he's from Iowa. He's a farm. Everybody says he's a farm boy. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, what would he really, I mean, maybe like in Star Trek V, where he was camping or something, he'd probably look like maybe wearing something like that.
Maybe, but, I see Bones as this thoroughly country guy, and he has all these chains on. But then again, it's the 23rd century, so, maybe the South is a little different.
Could be. Maybe clothing is different, I mean,
I don't.
Starfleet, when they show Admiral Kirk coming in the air tram, and the door opens up and you see all the other people walking around that are civilian clothes. You see like these weird flowing dresses and robes and
everything. Yeah, that reminded me of Space 1999 and Logan's Run a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, it wasn't 70s, but it was. The reason I say 70s, the 70s look of the future.
Yeah, something like that.
And the 70s look, and one thing about the 60s is they always envisioned the future kind of like the Jetsons, where everybody for some reason still had bouffants and flipped hair, and everything was a very kind of looked like. If you go on YouTube, you can probably still see them. Oh, in 1999, we'll be living in pods in the moon and all that kind of stuff. Your ticket to the wheel in space, that kind of Jetsons look.
Yeah.
So Star Trek had a lot of that Jetsons, where everybody's still kind of retro 60s somehow, but in a futurist kind of way. Where in the 70s, they were kind of trying to imagine the future as being more the future.
Yeah.
Like, not too bound to its time. Like they were trying to reimagine it a little better. Because, the budgets for things were getting better and they were doing more.
You had to live those days in order to understand, where they're getting their inspiration from. If you weren't born in the 70s or you weren't born in the 60s and you saw their take on the future, I don't think these people could really point their finger and say, this is 70s look or this is, what I'm saying? It's hard unless you've lived it, because I remember the big collar, because I used to have a suit that had big collars on it and stuff like that. And it, it had that kind of look. So you knew where they were getting it from. But if you didn't live those years and you didn't see what was going on around you.
I guess it's true because I was still young, but I still remember some of the 70s looks still being around. I mean, or you still see some 70s looks, especially around here. You'd see people who were just a little behind the times, still had the Farrah Fawcett hair and stuff like that. But so, when you see that stuff, it felt a little contemporary to you.
Yeah.
And, you see a lot of 70s shows still when I was younger. So the 70s was pretty close to me.
Yeah.
I felt like the 70s was not a far away thing. Like, oh, that's my parents' stuff. I felt like this is something I'm seeing around me. There's still some 70s looking stuff. So I kind of got it on that level. But I don't think, except for that disco suit that Bones was wearing, I didn't think it screamed the 70s. That was just so John Travolta, I couldn't help it. That was a civilian outfit, and they,
Yeah.
I call that Bones leisure suit. But anyway, the thing is that so there's another scene that I wanted to get to in that beginning. Oh yes, I guess we have to discuss.
Transporter accident was pretty horrific when I first saw
yes,
that.
another horror element. Because we had transporter accidents, but they didn't linger on it as much as this one. Now, this transporter is of a type we don't see again. It's like a teleporter that comes down and you see the stuff happening.
Yeah.
Looks sort of like a teleporter more than like this thing that comes down.
Yeah.
This literal beam, and you see people in it, where in the original they just saw stuff and it was actually a beam.
Yeah.
Like an actual beam you saw. But there were problems with it. And, is it me, or did that transporter never look quite right? It looked like there was always kind of a problem with it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, they fixed it, apparently. That was the only accident they had with it. But the thing,
it was kind of all squirrely and weird. It didn't seem.
Yeah, you see them screaming inside of it, and their bodies are misforming. I mean, that was pretty. I mean, at the age, I was pretty scared.
Janice Rand had to turn around.
How the hell they said that was rated G and not give a PG on that thing? I don't know how they got away with it.
That wasn't exactly Disney.
Yeah.
I mean, they didn't actually show Bambi's mother being killed and eaten alive or anything like that. That was a little more PG, that scene.
Yeah.
But, standards different.
Yeah.
I mean, that scene didn't particularly scare me because, you kind of saw an impression, but not the whole thing.
Yeah.
But what I felt bad for is the people who were at the other end of the station, because they said what they got back didn't live long.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to know what they got back.
Yeah.
I don't want to know.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thinking Horta. I'm just thinking something very mangled.
Something flat and I don't know.
It was barely alive when they got back. So that leads a lot of people to think these transporters are death machines. I've heard that repeated again and again.
Yeah.
That was the only time where there was like a literal death that happened right there. We saw that in Enterprise a lot because there were new devices. That was the first time we ever saw like a literal transporter accident that happened in front of us.
Yeah.
And I'm glad Barkley wasn't there.
Oh, jeez.
Would have freaked him out, but and they were safe.
Oh, God.
Yeah, those motion picture ones were not very safe looking.
No.
Even when she did Kirk up, it seemed like she has to do a lot more and it takes longer and it just seemed to have problems.
Yeah.
But that's why we never saw that type of transporter again. Maybe that was an experimental type of transporter that just didn't work. Yeah,
they were having problems with it right from the minute he got aboard the Enterprise. I mean, they were down in engineering and they were trying to get the transporter working from the minute the movie started. They were trying to get it working.
Well, that goes with the one thing about the motion picture, and actually let's get to that later because that goes with the very theme of the movie. But basically, there's some Enterprise action, and like you said, seeing V'ger absorb the Epsilon 9 and that transporter thing, that isn't exactly rated G stuff.
No, it isn't.
And that adds an element of horror and kind of anticipation to the film. Because, I've seen those scenes, but I looked at that transporter, like, boy, that's freaky.
That's just as cringeworthy as watching that eel come out of Chekhov's ear in the second movie. I mean, that's like,
And, but of course, that was more like obvious horror because,
Yeah.
But with that one, it's more like, yeah, you're hearing death.
Yeah.
And, I think what scares me is Rand having to turn away from it.
If you heard it in the theater, it'd send chills right up your back.
It's like this, because it's amplified through the transporter, but you're hearing this crazy shrieking, and it's like, Rand's like, I just can't watch this. And then, but that's the good thing about Star Trek. You actually experience these characters having real emotions over it.
Yeah.
Where Rand is not like, I've seen this a million times. Like, no, I'm too human. I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
And even Kirk is like, Janice, it wasn't your fault. Because she obviously blames herself.
Yeah.
Even though the transporter is malfunctioning. So you see there's an emotion, and Janice Rand is very traumatized by it. You can see in her expression that, she was trying to send him back, if I recall, right?
Yeah.
But for some reason they were already coming through, so they couldn't do it. So anyway, the thing with that is that, and about Commander Sonak, who was only in about 5 minutes of the film before his tragic death.
Yep.
I always wondered if he wasn't supposed to be like a stand-in Spock. And the reason I say that is because Kirk said he wanted a Vulcan in that position. Yeah. It's almost like he was trying to recreate what he had on the original Enterprise.
Yeah, and it came off a little bit prejudiced too, I think, because
prejudice toward
what's wrong with somebody other than a Vulcan taking that job? Anyone that has qualifications to be sitting on that
Yeah, I
You know,
think he wanted Spock there. I think he wanted to stand in Spock.
I mean, yeah, I understand what when Decker said. Well, there's not many people that's rated for this design station here, so you got very little to choose from.
Right, because it's obviously a very new ship. I mean,
So yeah, I mean, and the odd thing is that at the beginning of the Epsilon 9 station commander was actually supposed to be Zahn in the Star Trek Phase 2, who was playing a Vulcan.
Right, and that actor Matt, what was his name?
Can't remember.
I can't pronounce his last name for the life of me. He was the guy at Epsilon 9, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I wonder why they didn't just have him in there as Zahn to kind of give it that Phase 2 connection.
It could have. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered anyway because they were going to.
That would have died a horrible death, I guess.
Yeah. It could have, but.
So. Yeah. So anyway, so basically, we spend the first 30 minutes of the show basically watching Kirk be a jerk to Decker, and these horrific things happen. Now that I think about it,
I mean, we spend the first half of the film basically just trying to get the Enterprise out of dry dock.
Right, we do, but like I said, we're watching all these horrific things happening around them, and we're watching Kirk basically treat, Decker like a piece of.
Dull. It's not dull by any stretch of the imagination.
That's why
I
keep saying to people, this show is not dull. There's actually some very dark, horrifying elements.
There was a lot happening. You had Kirk getting his command back. You had people dying in the transporter. You had problems with different things going on with the ship, and you had a fight going on, with Kirk, and I mean, you had things going on, so it wasn't dull. I don't know why people say the movie was slow. It wasn't slow. Here's
what I think about it. I want to get to the ending a little bit later, but I get to the ending of it a little bit later. But I sometimes wonder too if people are used to more fanciful things in movies and things being very larger than life. Even though it's Star Trek and it's science fiction, some of the stuff in the motion picture was kind of real things. Real death, real destruction. It wasn't really that fanciful about it. It was more
plausible things. It didn't seem, like ridiculously like Flash Gordon-y or something like that.
Yeah, it didn't seem like ships shaking themselves apart and these extended, overdone scenes. It was all more realistic, and maybe people at that time wanted a fanciful thing. I don't know.
Well, like I said, they wanted that Star Wars kind of approach.
It's more fanciful,
They kind of ruined it, like I said, for the motion picture, because they made everybody's expectations for any science fiction.
Like I said,
after it to be like
Star Trek. I wanted to define Star Trek as a theatrical concept a little bit, because that deals with what the motion picture is. Because I think we both agree on that one a lot, because we've discussed it a lot. We've talked about this movie a lot, haven't we? On our own. This is a big deal. So then basically we introduced to Ilea, who is a race we've never seen, a Deltan, who apparently have so many pheromones rushing out of them, they have to take an oath of celibacy. They enter the bridge, and Uhura, it may sound a little prejudiced at first, but she says, she's Deltan, like it's a warning, like, be prepared, guys. And she comes in, they're all looking at her like, and she's looking around like, just take your eyes off people. I gotta do my duty here. And then Decker is like, oh, it's you, and they're, there's obviously a relationship. And Kirk tells her, well, I'm glad to have you. He says, my oath of celibacy is on record. Like, she expected him to come after her.
Yeah, or maybe he didn't trust that she was going to stay celibate, and cause,
maybe
problems on the ship.
Because obviously, these people have hyper hormones or something.
Yeah, they send it out, like, to, worse than it is when a regular human woman will kind of, in a way, but these people, like, 10 times more than that.
Right, so they're just... So basically, they're the galaxy's biggest sex machines in a lot of ways. They're just sending it out,
Yeah.
So,
and I guess their home world is a lot like the Edo there. What remember we saw there?
So what, they all dress in white and run around in these water refineries? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, there's something like that. They just.
Yeah, it sounds like a Greek health spa the way you're describing it. So, so I guess they're a pleasure kind of oriented people, but they're in Starfleet. They're obviously very knowledgeable. You could see that Ilea was smarter than your average bear. Obviously, she's on the Enterprise, so you have to be pretty high up to be on that ship.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well, I think she was trying to be too.
Yeah.
I think she was really trying hard to be professional because,
she's a lieutenant, so she wasn't green. She's been in Starfleet a while.
There's a deleted scene where Sulu is trying to show her because he can barely operate the thing. It's like,
tripping on himself.
break it apart, and she's like, "Oh, don't worry. My cell makes me as safe as anybody on the ship. You're okay. You don't have to freak out."
The thing of it is, though, it's not what they were thinking of. It's like, I got to go after this person. It's like your celibacy might be on record, but I don't have to be celibate.
Right. Well, Sue was freaking out. He's like breaking the console. He's all sweating.
Yeah.
And Eileen is saying, "Okay, cool it down."
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, so yeah, so we leave Earth. We go through the wormhole.
Yeah.
Go through the wormhole thing, and then after that, we end up dealing with Spock coming in on this Federation registered shuttle that's somehow Vulcan. It's called the Serac.
Yeah.
And wasn't there a shuttle like that in the shuttle bay?
In the shuttle bay? In that
Was there a shuttle like when Spock came in that shuttle bay?
Geez, I don't know. I have to look at that again, but I didn't really notice. I think it was just a Vulcan ship. He just left directly from Vulcan on this thing, but yeah, it's registered with Starfleet because they probably use it. So
if you get Mr. Scott's Guide to the Enterprise, that shuttle design is actually listed as a Federation shuttle at the time.
Okay.
I'm guessing that is, but that thing on the bottom was definitely Vulcan. It had Serac written on it.
Yeah.
So they may have had different sleds for that.
Yeah, could be.
Because the nacelles were not Starfleet on that ship. That looked Vulcan, those nacelles.
Yeah.
But the ship was actually Starfleet, I guess. But we got to get to the computers.
You mean the screeching, all this is happening and that's happening, and
yeah, well,
everything live from Dallas or
whatever.
whatever.
It's better to do the voice of the computers because the computers on this ship actually sound more like "Attention, launch crew!
Yeah.
A travel pod available! A travel pod available!"
Yeah.
They're like,
that was Robert Wise. You see, he said when he approached that film, he said he wanted the Enterprise to sound, the inside of the ship to sound like you're inside of a 747.
Right.
And so if you listen to the interior where there's really no talking, it does sound like you're in an aircraft, especially when you're walking through the corridors. You hear this, and I've been in a 747, and when it sits idle on the runway, it sounds like you're in the Enterprise on one of the decks because you hear the engines idling.
Right, because
muffled.
When Kirk's walking through the corridors, you hear this. You hear all this noise. But the computers on this thing, the warnings. I mean, if I was on that ship and that was green, I'd be like, intruder alert. These computers.
Yeah, it jumps you right out of your seat.
Yeah, these computers sound like Daleks or something.
Yeah. They got rid of the female voice and they replaced it with this annoying man voice. I mean, it's like,
And it sounds like this. It sounds like a Dalek. It's like this robot-y male voice.
Yeah.
It's like you said the thing saying, "If you don't get to deck 5, you will be exterminated." Sounds like a Dalek voice coming out of that thing. And when they did the director's cut, I mean, there's some things that were kind of weird in that, but I like the fact they took that out.
Yes, they erased it.
That was always jarring.
It made it so much better to watch the movie when they got that noise out of there. Jesus.
When you went to Star Trek 2, they added a calmer female voice.
Yeah.
I don't think it was
always been the voice of the computer. It's always been female.
I don't know if it was Majel doing that because she always did the voice of the computer in other series. I think she did it in the original too, but
I don't think she did it in Star Trek 2.
But again, it was a calmer voice.
Yeah.
And if they had a male voice later, it would be a calmer male voice. It wouldn't be that one that's barking at everybody.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to eat your soul, that sort of voice. It's like this.
A fan told me that the reason why it was in a male voice, and this is just a theory, that the computer was on a default setting and they hadn't programmed the computer with the proper voice yet. It's like, so now that's what it was, a default setting.
I would have rather have had the one from Signet 14 on that ship that called everybody dear.
Oh, yeah.
Report to the bridge, Eileen.
That's almost as scary as that, on 2001 year with that it's almost as scary as that.
Yeah, I can hear it now. I'm sorry, Captain.
Ow.
I'm afraid I can't do that.
Yeah.
But still it's better than intruder alert. Because I remember watching the movie like, that computer's freaking me out.
I think I would have rather heard Hal give those announcements than
Hal was calm, though.
Yeah.
He was murderous, but he was calm.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if Hal talked like that? They would have thought he was a serial killing computer from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I can't do that, Dave. You want your computers to sound like computers, not like barking villains.
Yeah.
So anyway, this is a
And
lot
then
of
if it wasn't that, it was the sound of the klaxon. Bar, 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 bar.
Right.
You know, that's directly from a 747. That sound, they got that right out of the cockpit because that's exactly what that sounds like when that goes off. That was so Robert Wise took a literal approach to the inside of the sound of the
right. So that was kind of contemporary to what 747s at that time sounded like.
Exactly. Yeah.
But the funny thing about that also is that the movie is generally pretty quiet. There are parts that have no real soundtrack, no real audio, where they're just kind of going into V'ger, and that thing starts up out of the blue.
Oh yeah. It's
Like, they don't really give you they don't really lean into it either. They just kind of it's there. It's like, because when you see TOS, that bridge and the bridge of this thing was pretty quiet. And if you look at it, you heard little things in the back, but with TOS, always that all that stuff in the background.
It just had the little beeps and the chirps.
So there was a lot of these little chirpy noises. So when you heard the red alert thing, it wasn't like there was dead quiet. This bridge had some dead quiet moments.
Yeah.
We heard virtually nothing.
Yeah.
And that thing would go on. It's like, oh.
Yeah.
Like one scene, they're going into V'ger, and they're seeing all this stuff coming at them, all this V'ger stuff, all these little colored thingies.
Yeah.
And Spock comes on the ship. I want to go back to that a little bit. Spock does come on the ship, but he's gone through Kolinar, but fails at it. Because he's apparently attempting the approach of V'ger, and it touches the emotional part of him. Of course, do I need to mention the moon thing? Because there's some controversy about Vulcan.
Oh, yeah, because the Vulcan doesn't have a moon, but originally when that came out, there was more than one moon. I think there was actually two moons around.
Which they dealt with in the director's cut, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Because what they did is they, TOS Remastered, they added CGI scenes that were make it more canon correct.
To me, it seemed like he was on an asteroid. I mean, when the original theatrical version, it looked like they were standing on an asteroid because space was like right there. I mean, it was like no clouds or anything.
That's what they said. That might not have been Vulcan at all.
Yeah.
That might have been a nearby asteroid.
Yeah, it didn't look anything like Vulcan, and the way the sky looked, it had all these moons. It's like crap. It's like they're standing right out on top of an asteroid looking into space. It's like, God, it was way too gimmicky looking, I think, when at the approach of Vulcan, and that. But like you said, I'm glad they cleaned.
There was a little moon. There was a big planet. That big planet may have been Vulcan. That may have just been an orbiting asteroid.
Could have been. Who knows?
Well, there's not really a moon exactly because it still has some size. I know that the moons of Mars are Phobos and Deimos are actually more asteroids than they are moons, but
Yeah.
But because of Mars' size, they kind of. But yeah, it's probably like well, I don't know.
Well, I think what happened is when they did the director's cut, they took all that scenery out and they just kind of put just the basic sky overhead, and so it is Vulcan there. You know what I'm saying? They put the big statues.
Right, they make it more Vulcan.
Yeah, so they kind of established that was Vulcan and not some kind of asteroid or moon.
Spock comes on the ship and everybody is ready to come over there in some romantic moment and practically embrace him, but
you basically dive on him.
Right. Uhur's like, "Oh, it's Spock!" And even Decker's relieved. He's like, "Ooh, boy, I can take one rank away." Yeah, and he's like, "Oh, well, we're aware of your record, Spock. Please take my seat that Kirk gave me." He's like, "Please, by all means, if I can do one thing on the ship for once." So anyway, because he's doubling a science officer after Sonak got killed.
Yeah.
So Spock comes over, and of course he's Mr. Logical Vulcan. And Bones is like, "Oh, I'm actually glad to see you." When Spock is,
no
poker face. And then Uhura's like, "It's how we all feel." He just walks into the turbo lift.
Yeah.
And Kirk's like, "Welcome back," and he just walks away.
Yeah.
What's going on with him?
Now, see that scene right there is another part that fans didn't like. But the thing about it is this is another part of the story that people overlook. Right.
He's just
that we were seeing a character going through a transition. From being told, trying to be all Vulcan, by the end of the movie, he understands that all logic isn't going to be the highest evolution. You have to have some kind of human emotional quality to go with it. He changes. By the end of the movie, he's back to his old self again.
Right. And the reason why you see that is because, V'ger is touching that human side of him.
Yeah.
There's a point in the middle of the movie where he's actually moved to tears.
Yeah, that's right.
Right on the bridge because he's experiencing something that V'ger had.
Yeah, he felt like a kinship with him because V'ger is going through the same thing that Spock was going through.
This is gonna be another one of those videos where everything builds up to my main point in the end. I mean, I know it's like all build up to this main point. I have this bubbling over and like boom, ready to come out. But yeah, these all build into this. But anyway, so yeah, we're going to the V'ger cloud, and then it's all quiet. There's this like light soundtrack music playing. Everybody's looking around, like you said. They're all looking and observing. It's all very space opera. And then there's that friggin' thing again. And then the next thing you know, intruder alert. And the intruder is this light beam that's a probe from V'ger.
Sound like a power drill.
That thing was like the sound effect.
They were cutting into the hull.
Like a Dremel tool or something, like a jigsaw.
Yeah.
And it's like a piece of light. And Kirk's telling everybody, don't attack it. It's just interested in the ship, and it's going through the records. And for some reason, it wants to process Hylia, I guess.
Yes, yeah, for some reason, yeah.
Oh, yes, I forgot about the unwarranted thing. Decker's telling him something's unwarranted. And Kirk said, how do you define unwarranted? And then that probe appears, and it zaps Hylia. And, of course, Decker again throws shade at Kirk. This is how I define unwarranted.
Mm.
So, okay. Then a few scenes later, after some quiet scenes, more. And this time it's the Hylia probe, which returns in a sonic shower. And I mean, you see the Hylia probe, and she's not transporting or beaming in. She's in there taking a freaking shower. It's like, what the
Yeah. Yeah, and they say, oh, she's white hot, or when they were saying that the temperature, she was like, white hot. It's like, well, that's probably why she's in the shower, is to cool off. But why? Why? I mean, wasn't the probe white hot when it was on the bridge, practically blinding everybody while it was trying to sear the roof off the bridge? I mean, it was like, why didn't it come into a shower?
Maybe there was just some debris on the probe and it wanted to get it off, so it decided to take a shower before it emerged. That was weird. Like, I gotta take a shower before I get on the. Before I jump into my white lizard suit.
Yeah, I mean, and basically that's all she wore for the rest of the movie was wearing.
And when you see all the Hylia ephemera, the action figures are all wearing that white thing.
Yeah, because that's basically.
Well, that's not actually Hylia. That's the probe version. The real Hylia wore a regular uniform.
That's right.
Except if you count the original miniature Mego figure, which is an admiral.
Yeah, they gave her the admiral's uniform, which is I don't know where the hell they got that from. There was no photograph of her actually wearing that.
No, they just put her in Kirk's outfit.
She had that orange, the yellowish kind of thing that you see in some of the publicity shots that that Stephen Collins was wearing. She had a version for her that was sort of like that mustard color, and then they went to the gray outfit with her. But she never wore an outfit that looked anything like William Shatner's Admiral uniform, so I don't know where that
was a weird figure choice having the Admiral outfit.
Yeah.
But isn't there a very early for Star Trek Phase 2 where they put Persis Kambata into like a TOS scant kind of look?
Yeah, it was like I don't know, it was just a picture of her, and she was wearing, it looked like yeah.
Because if I understand it, weren't the uniforms in Phase 2 going to be much more TOS-like?
Yes, they were going to look more like that, yeah.
I still, it would have been nice, though, this is my speculation, to see like a series maybe 80 to 84, something like that, in the motion picture era.
Hmm.
I'd have loved to have seen that 5-year mission and actually do the 5 years,
Yeah.
And I think that would have been a hoot. I'd love to have seen this thing on TV.
They had, when they did the movie could have been the pilot for the new series. They had all the sets built, all the sets were built, all the uniforms were made. All they had to do was just go right into television right after that.
And in 1979-80, by that time, there was sort of an ability to do more high-budget things on TV than there were in the 60s, so you could have pulled some of it off.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have had the ultra-low budget of some of TOS's stuff. You could have done some more theatrical things on TV at that time.
Right.
So, I mean, even Space 1999, even though it looked a little bit older-fashioned, they were getting into more fancy things at that time.
Yeah.
So you could get away with some certain things.
Well, I mean, just look at Battlestar Galactica, the original one. I mean, it looked pretty.
That looked theatrical.
It seemed good.
Wasn't the pilot actually a movie at one point?
Yeah, it was a movie they released in Canada. Became popular up there, and the TV series.
And you could have done a movie based on the motion picture like that.
Yeah.
It would have looked great. You would look great on the small. I would have loved to have seen a 5-year mission with that group.
Yeah.
Even not killing off Hylia, even keeping them on.
Yep.
They could have done it that way. I mean, it would have been cool to have Star Trek Phase 2 come out after that.
That's right.
And forget all that red uniform stuff. But anyway. That's just me. That's my
I mean,
preference.
they made all the money and then some. They could have gone right to TV right after that. There was no.
And they made even more money.
That's
So
right. They could have stretched it right out.
here we are speculating again. We
Yeah.
love to do that here on
So
Trek
that's
Time.
another gaffe of Paramount Pictures, you know.
But we could also call that another Star Trek story unvisited. That old world. You know, we could actually write that 5-year mission.
Yeah.
We could recreate that whole. I'm sure other
Many
fans have recreated that world.
Many authors have. They wrote out a lot of stories based on
I would love to see a fan story set in that universe, in that motion picture era, that look, that vibe. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, maybe one day if they stop coming down on YouTube, that some fans out there will probably put one together. Who knows?
So the Ilea probe is really surreal because she comes on the ship, basically a robo-voice version of Ilea, who refers to every character on the ship with their given name mixed with the word unit. So we have Kirk unit, I think it's Spock unit, this unit, except Decker. There's some familiarity with Decker where she just calls him plain old Decker. And even Kirk, even Spock says, oh, curious, not Decker unit.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Even though he didn't call him that, I always refer to the character as Decker unit over the years because, you know, that she didn't call him that. It just seems like a cool idea. But anyway, so what happens is that this probe is not exactly an android. It's a mechanistic version of a human, if I understand it.
Yeah, like a copy of a human.
Where everything is replicated with technology.
Yeah.
But it's not like a Data where it's an actual android with different aspects. It's an actual technological copy of a human.
Yeah. So
it has some of Ilea's memories.
Yeah. And even the personalities are replicated too. How do you? I mean, that's another philosophical debate there. Yeah. How do you technically to replicate a personality? I mean, that's a philosophical debate for another time. I mean,
yeah. Well, yet this V'ger probe is made out of lead or something and can just smash through a wall.
Yeah. It just parts a door, you know, like it's aluminum foil.
Again, back in TOS where Spock is pounding on that thing. They leave them to break the walls.
Yeah, something in common there. The two of them can turn metal into tin foil.
Yeah, and then she's like, I've recorded enough here. You will assist me further. Like,
yeah. It even has anger, too. It was
I mean, Bones could have inserted a joke in there like, damn it, couldn't she have at least used the door? You know,
all that knowledge
breaks the wall into the foil. So when some powerful being jams into something on the ship, it just turns into foil and
yeah.
That must be a thing about those ships. The substance changes and something powerful hits it. I don't know.
Yeah.
And you don't see any debris it just bends like foil. It's weird.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I always get a kick out of this scene. In the first year of Next Generation, I'm just going to go to Next Generation just for a minute. This possessed Admiral Quinn throws Geordi out the door, and the doors just fly out into the like it made of cardboard.
And the doors just open up like they were made out of paper. I mean, it was like that was so.
I reference that in TNG because you know you saw that Worf pounding on that thing, and you see even with Klingon, it's still not breaking.
Yeah, just putting little dents in the door. I mean,
this guy just throws Geordi out the door, and those doors just fly out like they're made of paper.
It's no wonder he didn't break every bone in his body going through those doors. I mean, holy jeez.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, if I were Geordi, like, boy, those are really crappy doors they put on that course. Well, it's like with those like the cardboard replacements until the new ones arrived on Tuesday or something. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't even look like they broke off or anything. It looked like it was just made to just fall off. You know what I'm saying? It just looks so phony.
Those doors look crappy.
Doors just open like that.
I mean, it's hard to believe that those flimsy doors would have just opened up correctly. It looked like they were like insulation.
Yeah.
Like the styrofoam just flew off and every guy flew.
Yeah, I mean, they could have at least made the effect look like they bent open, not just flew off the hinges, like, you know, basically, you know, they could have just had it bend open, like you could see them.
Right, like a TOS thing where it just turns into aluminum foil, like they commonly do.
Yeah.
Not so much fall off, like some paper.
But it looked more realistic than just falling down like the way they did it.
It looked like they just painted over polyfoam insulation and just boom.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that it was supposed to be safe for the actor to go out of, but geez, it didn't look right.
Well, I think it was a stunt double. I mean, can't you give them a little more, you know? They could take a little bit more of a beating there. I think, you know,
Yeah, but honestly, those doors look really bad when they just flew off like that. That was the only time TNG really looked like they were cheaping out those doors. Anyway, sorry, back to the motion picture again. At least, could you imagine if Ilea broke through and the wall just fell down? Like, oops, you lost the wall.
Like, oh, Scotty, you better chalk this on the list here of things you need to fix here.
And, you know, with Star Trek, you know, imagine the walls off and the wires start coming down and the rocks and all that.
Wires and charcoal and everything.
Right. And that's the Star Trek way. You just throw a bunch of rocks and wires at you when the ship blows up. Yeah, so maybe that's where all this extra equipment is on the ship. They store the little rocks and the wires up there to fall down when something goes wrong.
Another thing, too, about that scene was that, the sick bay in that looks even more advanced than what we see in later Star Trek shows. I mean
yeah, that is weird because that sick bay isn't that the same one from Star Trek 2? They basically reused it.
I think so, yeah. But I mean, they got this great big image like of what they were scanning. Remember, you could see the shadow going over Alia's body, and it was scanning as it was going up, and you could see like this big screen of what it was seeing. It's like, you know, even on Next Generation, you don't see a sick bay so well equipped and had so futuristic as that. I mean, they really spent a lot of time and effort building these sets to make them look futuristic. To say that this is from the 70s, I mean, you go back and look at it, so, it looks so 70s. Well, yeah, but you don't even see that on Next Generation.
Well,
movies
you don't ever assume they look 70s is maybe some of the hairdos, a couple of the outfits, but the Enterprise itself did not look 70s.
No, it didn't.
It looked way more futuristic than the original TOS one did.
Yeah.
And that didn't even look like it was 60s inside.
Yeah.
I mean, but this one was, you know, I mean, I can imagine people being like, ooh and ah, looking at it at the time.
Yeah.
Because it was, I mean, if you look at the 70s in real life, everything was still very submarine-y and bulky, you know.
I mean, you still see rivets on the hull, like on Battlestar Galactica. I mean, you could actually see rivets inside the cabins, and it's like, I mean, I know it's supposed to be a different thing. It's not Starfleet or nothing like that, but it still had the 70s kind of feel to it. Even the uniforms kind of looked a little bit, you know, of the times, you know.
Anyway, basically, the probe anyway is trying to tell them about this Vidra seeking a creator, which is where it gets like the changeling, and we go through this whole thing where Spock is very interested in this Vidra, so much so that he neck pinches some guy and takes a spacesuit out.
Yeah.
To go into Vidra, in which we get a really interesting scene that I always love, where Spock goes out in the spacesuit and he's observing what he sees as he goes, and you see all these planets and stuff and things that are recorded. He thinks it's Vidra's journey. He encounters the process Epsilon 9. In a comic book adaptation I have, the AMAR is actually in there. Which is not in the movie, but you see Epsilon 9 stored in every detail. It's data. And then this giant floating Ilea.
Yeah.
I'm presuming it's giant.
Yeah, it seemed like, I mean, when he said Ilea, I mean, at first you think maybe it was the real Ilea, but it didn't even really look, because it still had that glowing thing on the neck, you know, and he said it's a sensor and must have some special meaning, and he tries to mime. So I'm not even sure if that was really the Ilea body so much as maybe just some kind of a holographic.
Well, it's wearing Ilea's uniform, but it has that probe. So maybe the whole idea is that is Ilea, and that thing is interfacing Ilea with
the one on the ship.
Because they said that unit no longer functions, and that big Ilea did seem to be kind of dead.
Yeah.
Like they were just using the knowledge and transferring it over.
Yeah, connected somehow to the probe.
So obviously, when you digitize life forms, they don't live. But they just remain as biological data.
Sort of like they're just like frozen in time somehow, or I don't know. It's like whatever.
Right. But anyway, what happened is, and I've been debating to mention this because it's kind of dubious, and I always have a big laugh about it, is the mind meld scene. Obviously, he's seeing a bunch of stuff coming in lightning speed. Now, if you slow it down on most versions, it's pictures of Persis Khambatta and pictures of the Enterprise. You ever tried to do that?
Yeah, one time, but I didn't know about the other thing you was telling me about.
Okay. I've only seen it done once, and I think it may have been doctored, but a bunch of people are convinced if you get an early Laserdisc version of the motion picture or an early VHS, those couple of versions, there's a, shall we say, earlier pressing of this film where in that scene, if you pause it, like a Super VCR or a Laserdisc that pauses to a certain amount of seconds, there's publicity photos of Miss Piggy in that scene. And I don't know if it's true, they're just making stuff up, but it's a funny idea if there were pictures of Miss Piggy in there. Just, oh yes, boxing memories of Miss Piggy in the feature, bro.
So we have a connection to pigs in space now. That's part of the Star Trek universe. You know?
We mentioned that from the remastered version of Spock's Brain. I don't think we get into this. I just wanted to put this as an aside. They changed the ship in remastered, but in the original one, there's ion-powered chip coming toward, and Scott's like, oh, that's a mutant that's way beyond our technology, and what we're seeing is something that resembles a pigs in spaceship.
Yeah, it's all chrome and everything, and it looks like a rocket
ship. It looks like a pigs in
maybe.
spaceship, and so I was like, oh boy, I would love to get in there. I was like, looks like pigs in space. And then, when we see the motion picture, and I heard that Miss Piggy, I'll call it a conspiracy theory because I have no confirmation it actually happened. The video could have been doctored that somebody put up of it. But I would love to go back and get a copy of those first two motion picture physical media VHS and see if Miss Piggy's picture is actually in there. There's supposed to be 3 of them.
Yeah.
I've only heard it a few times.
It's hard with a conventional VCR to pause a frame and have it look clear. That's the thing. Because sometimes if you pause something with VHS, it leaves like a static line. Like
right, tracking.
Or something.
Our good old friend tracking.
Yeah. So if you can get it on a good quality, like a beta tape or just like an early Laserdisc version.
The beta had. They said only the Laserdisc and the VHS. I don't know if the beta had it.
They might have released. I think they might have released.
They said early pressings of it had it, but I'm not sure. I would hate to go out and go through all this and then find out that's some made up stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, the video didn't look doctored. But one thing about internet culture, people do doctor things.
They can. Yeah.
Have you heard about the national anthem thing where they doctored that to say stuff from that from that movie They Live?
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, they took an old national anthem print and put all these little messages into the scrolling, and somebody doctored it. I wonder if they doctored Miss Piggy in there. I mean, it would be nice if they didn't. I mean, I would love if they put Miss Piggy's picture in that. Might help. But
the thing of it is, though, is the people that work on Star Trek often will put these little Easter eggs in places.
Yes,
just
like the little duck on the Enterprise D.
Yeah. So it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, because they figure no one's going to see this,
It's going by so fast, all this imagery.
Yeah.
But it's mostly images of Princess Kimbata, like publicity images and pictures of the Enterprise and pictures of Kirk. But like 3 Miss Piggies apparently in there. So I would love to see. It's on my Blu-ray print.
Yeah.
I know that because I've actually tracked through that, and there's no Miss Piggy in there. So just a Star Trek motion picture conspiracy theory for you to mull over, discuss. It's a theory to me because I never seen a Miss Piggy stuff in real life. I just saw somebody put up a thing of it, and
maybe somebody watching knows if it's true or not. I don't know.
So anyway, I just found that funny that somebody had this idea that Miss Piggy was in there, and there's all these images, so who knows? But anyway, so after that scene, Kirk goes out in the spacesuit and rescues him, and this is
there was something about that was always confusing to me. Now Spock leaves the ship in a suit, and he has a thruster pack to get him through that.
And then he casts it off.
Yeah. Well, not just that, but the fact that Kirk was going to go in after him and not wear a thruster suit is like, well, how are you expecting to get way over there when, I mean, he was supposed to follow him into that past the door, but he wasn't wearing a thruster suit. And I'm saying Spock needed it in order to time the entrance, because remember how that door would just close and open? And so he had to time it just right so he could get in through that door before it closed. So Kirk would have had to have done the same thing if he was going to follow Spock in through that, but he wasn't wearing a thruster suit. So why did he even bother going outside the ship?
I don't know. I think he was just sitting there floating around worrying about Spock.
Yeah, but it just seemed out of place. Like it didn't, like he really didn't have to be there,
Yeah, I don't know. It was more that I don't think Kirk was thinking. I think he was being emotional, and he was like, what's going to happen to Spock? I want to make sure he's the most valued officer. He's my friend. I want to make sure I save him. You know how Kirk was.
I mean, I know that there's a scene they cut out, and it's not even in the director's cut, where Kirk is putting the suit on, and McCoy is like arguing with him, what do you expect to find out there, or something like that. And he goes, well, I'm just going to see, where it takes me. And if it, and then we cut back to Spock again. But that scene I remember seeing on television, and I don't even think it was in the actual theatrical release when it came out.
That's
But
probably a bonus seed on the Blu-ray somewhere. So.
yeah, it's something you're going to find on one of those things. But he doesn't even explain how he was going to catch up with him out there because, Spock had already gone into the V'ger machine itself. And I think what the inside of that was just like a big holodeck, basically, with the probe in there, because when the Enterprise, when they fly the Enterprise through that same opening, that's where they find the ship docks with that floor, basically, and they walk outside the ship and they see the satellite, at the end. So basically, that's the same room. So I think that's like a giant holodeck, basically, inside of V'ger.
You know what Epsilon 9 is and all that stuff?
Yeah, it's like V'ger's memory. It's like a big holodeck inside.
I'm wondering if it's a holodeck or more like a computer core, because
yeah, it could be a little both.
Spock is describing what he's seeing as data recorded, and then Ilea, the probe Ilea, says that the Enterprise will be reduced in data patterns.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, and there's one thing in that I want to mention this because this is another conspiracy that Gene Roddenberry himself propagated, although it was in passing. There's a machine planet that Spock speculates is the place where V'ger ended up.
Yeah.
Gene Roddenberry, after the 80s, always speculated that was the Borg homeworld.
Well, Spock said it was possibly V'ger's homeworld.
Right, so number one, it was speculation on Spock's part, and Gene was really speculating on it.
Yeah.
So who knows, that might have been the Borg homeworld, just not where V'ger.
Yeah, but at the same time, we have to remember that he also got images from around the universe as a whole. So it's like there's a lot that we're seeing that isn't in our galaxy that's inside of V'ger. He went through the whole universe, basically, and gathered all this data.
Right, because Spock said there were whole galaxies recorded.
That's right.
Because, V'ger combined with some giant thing to become this. Now, V'ger, as a creature, is actually a disambiguation and a mistake. Because when they arrive at the middle of this thing, there are these steps that come up to the Enterprise, and they kind of walk over to them. Now, in the director's cut, the steps actually appear.
Yeah, you'll see it coming.
But in the original version, they just kind of land somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, just there,
And they walk over to this thing, and they look like these kind of pentagonal steps you sometimes see in landscape gardens. There's a place down in that I used to go to up in Northeast Harbor called the Yazoo Gardens, and across the river you have to go over what I call V'ger steps because they look like the V'ger.
Yeah.
They're that same shape, so I just call that. Sometimes I'll go up there and point and say V'ger because it looks like the V'ger steps.
Yeah.
that same shape, and they're up and down like that. So they walk in, and of course it's not V'ger. Somebody fell asleep on the watch on that thing because it's actually a very corroded Voyager 6, a probe launched by NASA. And I find it interesting that they had launched Voyager 2, and they were proceeding as if there were going to be a lot in this series.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the design was to collect data. And there's a little plug for NASA in there directly. Because, NASA was still very big in the late 70s. They were launching the space shuttle that year. They were getting ready to put the Enterprise up there and test it in 76, 79. So, so there was a lot of hype about NASA being kind of reinvigorated around that time and the unmanned planetary program. So it was interesting integrating the Voyager series into that. And, of course, V'ger had amassed so much data, it achieved sentience and became a living thing, but it was more like a Vulcan. It didn't have the ability to perceive emotion and leap beyond logic. And it wanted to physically connect with a human. And there's this, it wants this.
Was his god? I guess he figured that was.
And I mean, it's trying to attack Earth because it wants to get information or something.
Yeah.
And the planet's actually on planetary alert. I always wondered if there was a lot of panic on Earth about the V'ger thing. I don't know, because it seemed they were kind of worried.
Yeah.
That Earth was under attack. It was trying to find its creator. And, of course, that wasn't what had happened. It was created years ago and didn't understand what had happened. So Decker wants to keep the final circuits because I think it implied that he knew that he would join with V'ger. And Kirk's like, Decker, don't do that. Yeah. And finally, Decker's like, as much as you wanted the Enterprise, I want this. So it's like, I'm going to get mine, even if I become this new life form.
Yeah.
Well, you let me do on my own ship.
Yeah, so don't argue with me.
I get a chance to become a whole new race here, basically. You're telling me I can't do that.
Yeah.
I'll do that. Bye-bye. So then we get this thing where they all kind of beam up, and then V'ger kind of beams away, and all that's left is the Enterprise, and they speculate on the creation of this new life form. And you said there was a scene that they were going to use, and they cut it out.
Yeah, apparently, and the reason why they cut it out was because of the budget. Was that at that moment when V'ger becomes whatever the hell it became and leaves, those 3 Klingon ships were supposed to reappear above Earth and attack the Enterprise, and that was supposed to be the scene where you actually saw the saucer separating from the secondary hull, and they were using the secondary hull as sort of a bomb. Because remember, early in that movie, Scotty, said something to the effect that, if we blow the ship up, we're gonna take V'ger with us. Remember, something to that effect. So they were going to actually get to see them prove the point by having them use the secondary hull as a bomb and just drop it behind them while the saucer section takes off, and the thing goes off and blows up all the Klingon ships, and the saucer lands on Earth. We get to see the legs come out and everything, and then where the door opens up in the back, and they'll run the ramp unfolds, and everybody comes out. That was supposed to be how the movie was going to end.
And that would have made it a very different film, actually.
Well, yeah, but the thing about that is that it would have taken away, I think, from the story as a whole by having this big ending where you lose the ship. It would have
kind of made it a little more Star Warsy.
Yeah, I mean, you lose the ship and everything right at the end, and you think, oh, we won, or we've solved the problem, and then you have this big, letdown of an ending where everything you gotten used to seeing, and now it's all over. It's like, well, is there going to be a Star Trek 2, or is this just the only movie you're going to make Star Trek? You know?
Again, going through that same thing here, except they actually did it the last time. Outside Prime. So, okay, they're talking about this being witnessing a birth, perhaps the next step in our evolution.
Yeah.
They decide to list Decker and Ilia not as casualties, but as missing.
Yeah.
Because I guess Kirk presumes they're still out there in some form.
Yeah, I think out of respect, he just didn't want to list them as dead because he figured they all became some singular entity and they live in some way,
But, I mean, I have to admit, the idea of Decker and Ilia becoming one single entity is extremely romantic. So that was an interesting ending.
Well, I think that was part of the other reason why Decker wanted to get joined with V'ger was because he could see Ilia again, maybe, or kind of...
Well, they were going to be the same entity.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I said, that's extraordinarily romantic. That's actually the very pinnacle of romance, because there's this old story. I don't know what origin it is. It's in a song from a movie I saw about this idea that human men and women were once the same, and something separated them. And the reason why they would fall in love is because they were always trying to meet up with their former detached selves.
Become one again, basically.
Right, and I'm wondering if that's what the V'ger thing was. If they were like, this was a two-half situation, finally coming together in a way that made sense, where they were literally becoming the same entity. I mean,
creating the seed that would lead to a birth to another life.
Right, exactly. I mean, it was like it was beyond mating. It was just like this literal connection with this V'ger probe. So it would be V'ger smack in the middle of these. Well, actually, it was the Ilia probe in there with him, though. It wasn't. Well, I guess it was really Ilia, but it was Ilia, Decker coming together with V'ger, and I'd love to see what that life form became, or if it was just an existential concept.
Somehow, I would think, because it couldn't imagine another universe, that somehow in that joining that it probably entered into another universe and left our universe. You know what I'm saying? That maybe V'ger or whatever this thing is now lives or exists in different realms of reality in other universes now that it has that ability to imagine.
Funny, now that we have all these alternate timelines, and all this stuff, I'm wondering if you could do a thing where V'ger has something to do with that whatever it became.
That's an interesting theory.
That it kind of fractured time in a way, and I mean, they never revisited that, and that's one thing about the TOS era. They were off into the sunset a lot.
Yeah. Which
kind of leads into the Wrath of Khan, because that was a consequence of running off into the sunset.
Yeah.
But we've done that movie.
Yeah.
Just Kirk, never bothered to check on our progress. So I was like, yeah, he didn't do that with a lot of people, didn't he?
Yeah.
He just went off, bye-bye.
Yeah.
Your planet's in trouble, but bye-bye. But Not with later series. Later series, they sometimes come back and revisit things, or they'd be forced on them. But
Yeah.
in the motion picture feature, bye-bye. You've created a new life form. Now go on your own way and live and whatever.
Yeah. But it leaves it open for imagination. Because
Right.
what it's doing is it's trying to present you with a theory, and then you have to cogitate on it.
And
That's
now,
what Star Trek is all about.
now my point is like I've been holding gas in a car for 2 hours, in the bathroom, and I'm like, the point has been like, ooh. There's a thing at the end where it says the human adventure is just beginning.
Yeah.
This little banner. And that was used on a lot of the promo stuff for it.
Yeah.
Here's my big point. And I'm wondering if this is why people had a thing about it. I wasn't alive in the 70s. I know you were a child during the 70s, but here's my thing about the motion picture. And you made this point too. People say that it didn't really feel like Star Trek to them. And yes, the ridiculous theory, and you said this to me, and I'm going to regurgitate this, so I think we're in the same wavelength with this. Maybe it's not so much that Star Trek the motion picture doesn't feel like Star Trek. Maybe it's actually the most Star Trek of the films. And you made that point. I mean, what are they doing in this film? Seeking out new life, new civilizations, boldly going.
Yeah.
It's not our 5-year mission is to fire phases when necessary, grab aliens by their ears, whatever. I'm just talking about Kirk's fighting.
Wires from the ceiling.
Right, all that stuff. They're actually doing what Star Trek set out to do. They're actually exploring, and they're looking at the universe.
Yeah.
It's actually like they're more on an actual mission rather than, just a sequence to get attention and to get people, interested. It's more penetrating. More, how should I put this? I'm not saying the other Star Treks aren't, because I love all of Star Trek. It's a lot more like a work of art in some ways.
Yeah.
Because the themes in it, and again, this is applied to Star Trek a lot, but some of the themes of this are kind of cerebral. In the motion picture, I can imagine you leaving that with a lot to think about.
Yeah. Because
the story is essentially about an evolution, about the human condition, which is what Star Trek is. And you see the contrast of characters. You see Kirk, who's being extraordinarily human and flawed at the movie.
Yeah.
You see Decker, who's kind of getting subsidized.
Yeah.
He's got the skill. You can see when you see him commanding, he's obviously knows his stuff.
Yeah.
And is very experienced, and Kirk is like pushing him down and down further. And in the end, he doesn't want him to be. He doesn't want him to even do that last thing. He's like, nope, I'm taking this. I'm going to be this thing. So, so you have this existential thing of Decker actually realizing that in order for me to achieve, because Kirk has subsidized me so much, I have to transcend humanity.
Yeah.
I have to be something beyond where Kirk can get me. Kirk can't demote me from where I'm going to go now.
Yeah.
You see Spock, like you said, in his search of V'ger, he loses his total Vulcanness again. He becomes that middle ground gray area character that he was before. Still logical, but measured with some emotion.
Yeah.
And I wanted to mention this. This is a side thing. Bones actually seemed very vulnerable in this movie.
Who did?
Bones. And the reason I say that, at the end of that whole wormhole scene, Bones looks terribly freaked out.
Oh yeah. Well, the other part too is how nervous he was. Remember how many times can we count Bones walking onto the bridge, looking around, then turning around and heading off the bridge? It's like I don't want to see what's gonna happen.
That's this movie. Like, you see him walk in and go out the door and come back. And
he was going to come up here to do something or say something, but when he looked at the view screen, he's like, "Okay, I'm out of here."
Oh, and I forgot to mention another thing. It was kind of, they talk about it now. Apparently, Deltons are psychic surgeons.
Yeah, because of Chekhov. Yeah.
Chekhov was on the bridge, and Chapel was fumbling with a medical kit. And I was like, I can stop this pain. So she just touches him, and all of a sudden, he's feeling better. So apparently, they're physically empathic.
Yeah. They would have probably explored that more if they did a series and they had Deltons,
Well, if I understand it, weren't the Betazoids very loosely based on what they wanted Deltons to be?
Yeah, so I heard that was kind of where they got their inspiration.
I know, obviously, when they set up Riker and Troy, they're a Troy and Aelia type couple.
Yeah, exactly.
I see a lot of parallels, including the unusual accent. Now, obviously, Princess Kabaza's accent is some disambiguation of Indian English and British English.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Again, kind of with an alien thing mixed in, almost like Troy tried to do.
Yeah. Well, they borrowed a lot from Phase 2 to make Next Generation. You know,
Right, because you were talking about Troy and how her accent was kind of a made up one that was a mixture of different things that nobody else ever used, so just to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But but like I said, I always think of Princess Kimbata, of course, as being Indian. But when I watch the actual movie, the accent is like a totally different thing. It's like a little Indian, a little English, some alien stuff mixed in.
Yeah, it does sound like a recreation of a language or something, or some kind of
right. Like she's trying to develop a Deltan accent.
Yeah.
We never heard any other Deltans talk, so we don't know if they all talk like Ilea.
Yeah.
So, which just adds even more when she has that robo voice, and then it just becomes this whole other thing.
Yeah.
Like the accent changes again. So Ilea's voice changes a lot in this movie. It rolls all over the place because she's trying to create this alien with an accent, and then this probe thing makes her into this robot voice. So it goes all over the place. But still, Robot Ilea is a lot less annoying than Intruder Alert.
Yeah, really.
At the end of the day, aside from some weird little gaps and Kirk being a jerk most of the movie, until the end when he was kind of like a more sensitive, likable character we all knew.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I noticed in the end of the movie, they all kind of become themselves again.
Yeah, that's what I meant. It's like there's a lot of story arcs, character arcs rather, going on in this movie.
Another thing about people say this movie is slow and boring, it is not.
Yeah.
And here's the thing about this is a character movie. It's not let's go out and just shoot something or run around through corridors or whatever. This movie is actually about characters experiencing fear and love and compassion and need, and you know it's human. It's esoteric. It's Gene Roddenberry.
Yeah.
It feels very Star Trek-y to me. What the essence of what I understand, and the more I see it, the more I say this is actually a work of art almost. It's Star Trek's 2001. But here's the thing. I'm just thinking of teenagers, like you said, and you made a good point about this, with Star Wars in their mind, with space battles and zap guns and Han Solo shooting Greedo and blah, 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 and going to see the story that's kind of adult.
Yeah, it's making you think, and nobody wants to think when they sit in the theater. They want to just be entertained.
Well, that's why I always get a kick out of the fact they rated it G like it's some Disney movie, and it's not.
maybe the censors got it all wrong too. Maybe
I think it rated G as being like some movie with songs in it. Oh my! I'm glad they didn't make it into a musical.
Like, yeah, this is not Mary Poppins. You know,
can you imagine if Ilea floated with a little umbrella through space instead of the sonic shower?
Yeah. You're going to see the Seven Dwarfs, you know, working with Scotty and Indian.
Right. Well, that's getting back into JJ territory, so we got the little dwarf alien.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, they could have Disney-fied this, make it more rated G, but the rated G seems right, because when I watched the movie, never mind all the horrific elements in the beginning of the movie, I can't see like a 7-year-old at that time getting this movie. It's kind of there's a lot of adulting going on in it, as they'd say today. It's a movie for the grown folks.
Yeah.
I mean, I could kind of see college students going there and kind of thinking about it, and you know, it's Star Trek. It's philosophical. It's space opera. It's romantic. It's very romantic.
Mm.
You know, I mean, not romantic in the kind of stereotypical sense, but romantic in the sense that Spock has this romantic affiliation with V'Ger, where it's bringing out his human side.
Yeah.
Kirk has a romantic affiliation with the Enterprise.
Yeah, we see that in that big long scene where Scotty's showing them
right, the scene where they're showing off the Enterprise, where for about 10 minutes you see all this doo doo doo. You know, you see, and Kirk's like,
yeah, it's almost like he's dancing with it or something.
Like heroes. You know, practically, it's like that scene in The Naked Time where it's like, now I know why she's called she. You know, this is. It's like he's really making love to this ship. Basically, this is a romantic event.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this is why he wants. This ship is his mistress. It is absolutely clear there. And Harry Mudd, as much of a liar as he was absolutely right when he said they're in love with their starships, and he was right about Kirk.
Yeah. Kirk
is obsessed with that Enterprise, and when he said it's a beautiful lady and he loves her, he wasn't lying.
Yeah.
That guy loves this ship. You can tell. He's like, oh, I need to be here. My lost love Enterprise. There's a romantic affiliation there. And even Scotty's looking at him like, yeah, I know. And Scotty's no better.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. You remember in TOS when that Doman of Elos insults him by saying that we're interested in the weapons, not what drives it. Engineering from menial. It says, without engines,
he was about ready to blow up on her.
You know? Like he insulted his romantic partner. So you see in this movie that these characters all have a romantic edge, you know. Now, Decker, obviously, his romance is with Ilea.
Yeah.
But you can see he's also kind of giddy about being in command of this ship, and that he wants to stick his chest out a little bit.
Yeah.
Although I noticed something about him, too. Is it me, or did a lot of Decker's characteristics go over into Will Riker? The reason I know, we don't see a lot of Decker in the movie because it's mostly about him being screwed up, but, you know, screwed over, most of it. But the Decker character...
I don't know.
He's kind of casual, didn't seem as, you know...
Well, okay, yeah. On that score, yeah, I would agree. There's this
he had this affiliation with an empathic alien.
Yeah.
He wasn't exactly Riker, but I could see how they took elements out of Decker's character and made him Riker.
Yeah.
Because, you know, he wasn't as, like...
See, Riker's, he also has a little bit of that Kirk personality, too, you know, especially when he's in command of the Enterprise.
Well, earlier Kirk.
Yeah.
But by the motion picture, Kirk is a guy who's been seasoned a little bit, and, you know, he's more pompous.
Yeah.
Well, he was just kind of pompous, but in an older way.
Yeah.
I always sense Kirk, motion picture, about 43, something like that, you think?
Yeah.
Not the 30-something, you know, young guy out, gung-ho guy out there trying to explore the galaxy and all that in TOS. He was almost seasoned. He was a little more of an admiral, where Decker was this very casual young guy. Because, I mean, when Kirk first met him, he acted like a cadet almost. He's like, I hope this is some Starfleet pep talk.
Yeah.
That sounded like some cadet just got out of the academy almost. Like, what is he, like 19? You know, like, you wouldn't usually hear a commander saying that. He's very casual and young seeming. That's why I mentioned Riker, because Riker always seemed kind of a young guy. Like, he's...
Well, at the same time, I mean, there was a familiarity between Kirk and Decker, too. So, I mean, there was, like you said, something, they might have had served together a little bit. Maybe he
might have been his first officer during... When Spock was on Koldenar, I don't know.
The last 2 years of the 5-year mission.
Kirk, you could tell there was a familiarity between the two.
Yeah.
And when Kirk took over the seat, there was a personal resentment.
Yeah.
Because he said, you recommended me to this command, and you told me how envious you were.
Yeah.
So it's like, obviously there was some connection between the two.
Yeah.
But Decker would just have this casualness, and the way he leaned over everybody, Riker tended to do that.
Yeah.
He kind of leaned over you. Where Kirk would always stand there, being very officious. Where, you know, like, he'd go over and in that wormhole scene, he'd lean right up against Chekhov like they were in a football huddle.
Yeah.
Maybe like, projecting asteroid, you know, that wormhole stuff. Yeah. I always love that dialogue because it sounds so bizarre. It changes their whole thing.
Yeah.
So you have this surreal element. And, you know, I'm wondering if Robert Wise, when he directed this, wasn't a little inspired by Stanley Kubrick. I saw a lot of Kubrick elements.
Yeah.
Not dialogue in every scene, the romance of the surroundings, a little chilliness, but never boring to me 1 minute.
Yeah.
But you know, maybe here's my thing about it, and I'm wondering, and this is my main point. You know, people have called this, I'm not saying Star Wars is bad, because I agree with Stewart over on Trek Yards, hi Stewart, about, you know, because he was talking in a recent video he posted up about Star Wars and Star Trek fans. And I agree there should be more civility between them. But he notices that the Star Trek fans tend to be more tolerant. And I'm wondering if that's because a lot of Star Wars fans, it tends to have an adolescent fan base who grew up with it and who fall in love with it. Star Trek usually is something people watch when they're younger, and they may love certain action adventure aspects of it. But when they grow up, they get more from it, and it becomes a different thing to them.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, Star Trek is definitely a thoughtful thing. And the motion picture for a movie is a visual and psychological feast for them. It's very psychological. You leave having a lot of points to think about. And, you know, to be honest with you, of the original films, I don't know if it's my exact favorite. I mean, 4, it's hard to beat that as far as, you know, just everything kind of working out in that. But that's at least near the top one of my favorites, the first one.
Yeah.
Because it's so Star Trek. If you actually understand Star Trek, it's so fundamentally what Gene Roddenberry wanted.
Yeah.
The conflict being human-based, not based in hatred.
Yeah.
You know, what did Whoopi Goldberg call it? Adam and Eve sort of problems.
Yeah.
You know, like competition, jealousy, things like that, and you deal with that. And, that's why I love that line, the human adventure is just beginning, because this movie's about different aspects of humanity.
Yeah.
In the characters. And then this one character that is unhuman who wants that quality. Do you think that's why Decker wanted to join with V'ger? Because he thought that he relished the idea of changing who he was in a way?
Well, maybe it's just the idea that for Decker, it's not so much being captain of a starship, but the more to the point of exploring the unknown. And this was the best way for him to do just that, was
becoming the unknown.
Becoming the unknown and seeing the universe for the first time. I mean, what's more appealing to an explorer than something like that? He would gladly give up the Enterprise to Kirk just so he can go out and explore in ways he never could with the Enterprise. He could just take it out to a new level,
So like I said, that's why I think when I see Decker, there's a youthful aspect to that character, because it's all very, like I said, the whole movie has a romantic, esoteric kind of aspect to it. And, it's funny, as a kid, that kind of stuff always appealed to me.
Yeah.
Even at that time, I always wanted to kind of have things to think about. And, it reminds me, I think, the first, this is going to be a weird thing to say, but I wanted to mention this. The first time I ever saw that movie, I was on TV. I was in some room. And for one moment, I was about 6, 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I had this very tangible idea after seeing that of what my life in the future was going to be, and it all seemed workable. I remember they called me out of the room and it was all gone. Almost 7 years old. But for a moment, it's like Barclay said in The Next Generation. I remembered what happened, but just not how or why. Everything kind of came together after seeing that. I'm always hoping one day, now that I'm an adult, I'll have that experience and it'll just work.
Yeah.
But, if a movie does that to a 7-year-old, that's on a different level, Because, I've seen stuff in that was challenging to me at that point, but the motion picture had a very strange effect on me. It got me to thinking about things at that age that I didn't think I'd ever be thinking about. It was a very odd experience for me. And whenever I see it, it makes you ask those questions about things. And this is the main part of the point.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've noticed this, just out in the world in general, but over the years, do you think that people in groups have started to see thinking and analyzation as an offense? I've noticed it a lot. People thinking that, well, if we think too much or if we analyze too much, we'll lose ourselves in that world. And, we have to be real. We have to be totally honest all the time. And basically, in the end of the day, it reduces you to being a permanent adolescent who just stays in this limbo of being a half child, half adult.
Yeah.
And growing up doesn't mean you lose your humanity. It just means you gain it at another level. And that always appealed to me. And I think that when I look at the motion picture, it doesn't seem like it's from the 70s to me. I agree with you. But it does seem like it's from a place where people actually desired to think ahead a little bit. Maybe that doesn't make sense to you when I'm saying it, but I
think I know where you're going, because if you, we'll just say you take the first movie and you take the second movie together, they're like almost two different kinds of science fiction there.
Well, not even movies, it's the way people are now.
Yeah, it's like you have a Star Trek, the motion picture, and then you got a Star Trek 2, but the two movies don't even really resemble anything, like they don't really individually, they don't kind of say Star Trek, but together, if you put them together as like a single thing, then it's like, well, you're getting the different aspects of Star Trek all together when you put these two movies together. You get the thought, and you get the action, and you get the character development all in these two movies, first and the second movie.
I don't want to be punkish here or sound like I'm just being bratty, but I just wanted to mention this. I was watching Quantum Leap the other day. Boyfriend got the Blu-ray series, which, by the way, they restored all the original music in the Blu-ray, which I'm happy about.
Oh, good.
And in one of the first episodes, he leaped into an English lit professor in the 70s. And, you saw all this role-playing happening. And, when I look at a lot of things from that era, I think, my goodness, there was a time, just before I was born, even a little after I was born, where the coolest, hippest, in thing to do was discuss philosophy, advanced physics. It was cool, it was youthful, it was hip. Now it's nerdy, it's geeky, not there's anything wrong with that. And now it's like, oh, what's the latest teen pop star? What's the latest thing? It's gotten very, like I said, it's in that limbo.
Actually, in a way, I was going to actually say the opposite. Because I remember when a time in the 80s, it wasn't very cool to be nerdy. But now it seems like kids today are nerdy, and there's nobody really after them. To prove that, I was at the Chinese restaurant last night eating, and who walks through this door but this young girl, probably like in her early teens. She's got pink hair on. She's got an anime shirt on. She's wearing tight black shorts with a fishnet stocking, and she's got rabbit ears on. And she's sitting there. She's sitting on the table, like said, and they're talking about anime stuff.
Like I said,
it's cool to be a nerd, I guess.
That's more of a look, though.
It's okay to talk. It's okay to talk anime stuff, and it's okay to talk about comic book stuff. And nobody makes fun of you for that anymore.
Here's the weird thing now. The interest now of that stuff is more, unfortunately, I've just noticed for me, is more snide and ironic. It isn't a genuine interest with much beauty. I just don't see the beauty in it. There's no romantic affiliation. It's like, oh, well, this is cool in an ironic way. It's a very snide kind of interest. I mean, it's a brattier attitude. Like I said, the attitude you come toward it as, not you, but these people, a lot of it is an adolescent one. I don't know how to explain this in a way that makes sense. You'd have to just experience it. I see people dressed and maybe they have the Hello Kitty thing on, or maybe they have stuff on, and when they open their mouth, they talk like they're 14. Their appreciation of everything is very superficial, like they're laughing at everything. And when I see the motion picture,
well, that's an intellectual nerdiness. When you're talking about stuff like the motion picture, that's food for thought. But,
right.
But like what I'm seeing is that younger generations today are growing up in a society now where it's not, you shouldn't have to live in a closet if you like Star Trek. If you like Star Trek, just come out and say it, and and embrace by that.
But like I said, the appreciation of it, when you get down to they may like the outfits, but it's still a bratty, ironic teenage interest. I don't see that food for thought.
It depends on the age of the person you're talking to, though.
Like I said, I'm talking about 35-year-olds who act like that. Like you're going into a different realm. I'm talking about your young teens and stuff like that. Now that's what I'm talking. Well, they're teenagers. They're teenagers, but like I said, you wouldn't want to be a 35-year-old being like that. But that's what I see.
No, that's different.
Well, like I said, but I see that a lot. And I just think that and I saw that coming up in the '90s, that appreciating Star Trek ironically.
Yeah.
I kind of sometimes feel like Spock about when that one about the Medusans.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I genuinely intended to honor the ambassador. I sometimes want to say to Star Trek, I genuinely love the show,
Yeah.
Because you'll hear people say, oh, Star Trek, that's cool. They'll have a snide, and they're like 30. It's like, you sound like you're 14. Didn't you grow out of that idea? Because I've heard it said once by a family member who shall go nameless, because they could be watching. Nobody in my immediate family, nobody I'm close to, said to me with a straight face, to me, sarcasm is the highest form of humor. I'm going to tell you, if I had a cup in my hand, I would have dropped that cup. I'm hearing a 40-year-old man talking to me as if he's 13. And that's what I see a lot of, that idea that sarcasm and snarkiness is the ultimate appreciation of everything. Not humor, not laughing about something, but just being snarky and kind of punky about it. And that's what I saw in The Last Jedi when they burned the Jedi. That was a very bratty, punky thing to do. And, I went into Portland once to a store, and I was talking about a review I saw online, just in a very genuine way. And the guy has video games and all kinds of Star Trek stuff and albums and all kinds of things. I thought, okay, he'd be cool about it. And he's 40. Oh, yeah, well, of course he'd be that way because, he's got a YouTube channel. He's making all kinds of money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was snarky, miserable, snide attitude.
Yeah.
And, you know,
But I run across people like that, through my life. I mean,
and I mean,
there's people that are 30 years old and they like something, but they let what they like kind of keep them at a certain level of
and
thinking. You know what I'm
like I
saying?
said, that was an underground subversive culture in the 70s and 80s. That kind of punky attitude. It was underground. It wasn't major. It was an underground thing. Then in the 90s, it became mainstream.
Yeah.
And now it is the mainstream. So it's just part of the culture. But in terms of my culture, I'm still that. I mean, it's not a fetishy thing with me, but I guess I'm still that person who is like that English lit student in the 70s who thinks that being food for thought is the absolute, genuine, coolest thing, and we should always strive to be smarter people.
Yeah.
Kind of coming out of the 60s, I mean, if people talk to me who are philosophical, who are modern, they'll say, Andre, were you born in 1971 or something? Because I noticed that about you. You tend to, even with your humor, you tend to like to think about it a little bit. And, now, even though the motion picture, and I know this isn't, I'm going to bring this up, and other quality people criticize, is they think it's humorless.
Does it really have to have humor?
I don't know how to finish it because it doesn't really, it's not really about humor.
Yeah.
It's more of a study. I guess it's not, I mean, there's some awkward, but it's not, I mean.
Well, Terminator, the Terminator was humorless, and yet that was a big friggin' hit. They made how many films out of that after? So do you have to have humor in something to make a good film?
Well, it's just weird people like it. Terminator, there's action in it, so you can kind of.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that as an example. I mean, when somebody says that, you can counter that by saying, well, the Terminator didn't have any humor in that, but I bet, people still watch that film and love it. It's like,
I think that rated G gets the motion picture in a lot of trouble. I don't know if it's rated G anymore, but it makes it seem like it's going to be a kiddie movie.
Yeah.
But, it's funny how we stigmatize things. Is rated G per se directed toward kiddie movies? I mean, or we just associate it with kiddie movies.
The only way I can explain it was probably just the way the censors worked at that time, because there was only 3 ratings. Right. You had G, PG, R, and X.
I will mention something about motion picture. There's some colorful metaphors in it.
There is, yeah.
So it's not rated G by any modern standard I can think of.
No, but like I told you before, rated R would be like rated XXX today, because rated R back in those days was like you'd see it almost everything.
Right, because in the 70s, the punkier kids say, "Oh, we're going to see an R-rated movie, like it's some big deal." Where today you get like 10-year-olds seeing R-rated movies.
Yeah, R-rated doesn't mean anything today. You just get an extra F word here and there, and that's rated R now. But that doesn't mean nothing. I mean.
And I mean, here's the thing now. Now you've got this weird middle ground of ratings. I know we're getting into ratings and now unrated, and that could be friggin' anything.
Yeah.
That could be either a kid film that's so obnoxious that it's not even worthy of rated G.
Well, the funny thing about that is that's deceptive, because I've watched some movies that are like they call NR, which is not rated, I guess.
Right.
And I find that a lot of those movies aren't really skin flicks or anything like that, and they're actually pretty good movies, and they give you thought about it. I mean, I was watching something on a.
Unrated is a weird thing. It doesn't really subscribe to anything in particular.
Yeah, it's
almost like it's an indie movie thing. Like they just didn't rate these movies.
Yeah, they didn't take the time to rate it, and they just threw it out there and say, "Well, watch at your own risk. We don't know what's in it, so just watch at your own risk."
But, it kind of is a little more inviting, maybe.
Yeah.
Like I said, we talked about this the last time. Sometimes censorship can be a messy thing.
It is these days.
Because you were talking to me last week about, maybe censorship force people to be more creative. But I think with rating systems, I don't know. It seems to make movies a little less touchable. So I don't know. But it's a weird thing. But with a motion picture, I wouldn't even say it's underrated. I think it's misunderstood. I really do.
It's only misunderstood in the context that people were expecting it to be
the Star Wars
something else, and it wasn't, and they felt disappointed because in their minds they knew Star Trek, they've seen it at home on TV, and they figured, oh yeah, that'd be great to see a movie of Star Trek because we figured it's going to be just as good as Star Wars. But what happened was when they went in the theater and they watched it, they were reminded about what Star Trek really is, because what they saw in the cage, and in the pilot episode,
The motion
You know,
picture is closer to the cage.
yeah, it was something like that, and it left you thinking about what you saw, and you come up with all kinds of ideas, and it inspires you to think about different things, and really Star Wars doesn't really do it on that scale so much. I'm not going to say it doesn't at all. I mean, it does, but not on the scale that Star Trek the Motion Picture does, where you're thinking about loftier, higher plane kind of things. You know,
is it the big cliche to have that Star Trek versus Star Wars discussion in a long term now? I mean, that's almost getting cliche.
Well, these days, the two are almost in the, I mean, there's almost no distinguishing the two of them now.
Well, yeah, we're talking about another kind of Star Trek here. We're not talking about what we're talking about.
But there was a time when there was a noticeable difference between the two. And it didn't matter. I mean, you can still like Star Wars and you can still like your Star Trek. But just understand these are two separate forms of science.
I was going to do a separate video about that with you, but could that just be an addendum to this one? Because Star Wars did precede this. Stuart did a video about this subject. I think you can see it on YouTube. I might link that with this one because that's a perfectly appropriate thing.
Yeah.
I always liken Star Wars like this.
Yeah.
Star Wars, and my friend Henrique, shout out to you, said it this way. Star Wars is a universe that's cloaked in ancient mythology, kind of like the Odyssey or the Iliad or Homer.
Yeah.
Things that aren't that tangible, almost spiritual things. The Force, what drives the Jedi. There's things in it that aren't human exactly. There's mysticism. There's ancient knowledge and energy. They're driven by things that there's supposed to be a good and evil battle, but the good and evil are more spiritual.
Yeah.
It's driven by a whole other thing.
Yeah.
But Star Trek is very distinctly human. It's our future, it's connected to our world, and it's immediate.
Yeah.
Star Trek deals with our grounding in reality, where Star Wars is really complete fantasy.
Yeah.
It's a universe where there's a battle going on, but it's like the battle of the ancient Greek Titans.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's clothed in that level of antiquity.
Yeah.
It isn't really territorial disputes. There's this force and there's a mysticism there. Star Wars, it's a fantasy to me. It's a fantasy sci-fi.
Yeah.
It's driven by intangibles. Things you aren't supposed to think about. I'd say Star Wars is, would you say, a little more religious in that way? In the sense that it's more a belief that you have to deal with and just a belief that these things are happening.
It has things in there that are kind of feel religious.
Right,
and it makes me think about the other movie that I like watching, and it actually takes that to another level, is Dune.
Dune deals with that on a direct level.
Yes.
Because you actually go into these illusory, you're talking about the Kyle MacLachlan one from the 80s, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That movie goes into complete meta content.
Yeah.
Things that have nothing to do with objective reality at all.
That's right.
That don't relate to it, that are just, completely psychedelic. Just things that are meta content that don't relate to reality per se. Where Star Trek, I think, to be effective, and I mean, you could take this as a slam toward the Kelvin universe, toward disco, if you want. Yes, I guess disco is the preferred term for Discovery now, not STD.
Yeah.
I'd rather use disco. Speaking of little McCoy's disco outfit here.
Easier to say, yeah.
Discovery, I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, the thing is that, so yeah, the thing I have with a motion picture and the new what we're doing now, is that Star Trek, in its current point, seems to have forgotten how to ground itself in reality of the human condition.
Yeah.
It takes the approach of Star Wars, which is fanciful. But still, it doesn't have that ancient mythology that makes Star Wars work.
Yeah.
Star Wars can be action-oriented and fanciful and have these heroes and villains, but it's grounded in that mysticism that makes it seem like there's a tangible thing underneath it.
That's right.
If you take out, that's why that destroying the Jedi thing didn't make any sense, because that's what's holding Star Wars up.
Yeah.
If you go underneath this, all the stuff Yoda talks about, there's this thing underneath all these battles that makes it all work, that holds it up.
Yeah.
So when you're younger, you can enjoy all the action. When you're older, you might see the mythical arc underneath it.
Yeah.
And if you take a thing like Star Trek, make it like the surface veneer of Star Wars, but remove that mythological arc, what do you have?
Yeah.
Not much, do you? It's a surface veneer. You can't dig that deep. With a motion picture, you have surface veneer, you have things coming at you, you have human stories, You can dig deep into that. You can go into that and pull things out that you didn't see.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it in many years, but I've heard that about Ridley Scott and Alien. That there's definitely action there, there's definitely horror there, but you can dig deep in that and bring things out of it.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know, maybe it's a lost art. Maybe people just don't have that instinct to ground things so much in reality. You can layer ideas upon layering. In the end, it's good writing and good directing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's an art in itself on trying to get a story to make into a movie. There's really a lot of work to that, and there's a lot of editing, there's a lot of revisioning, and there's all kinds of stuff that go into it. And like you said, maybe the people today that are doing movies in Hollywood and stuff like, I'm not going to say all of them because I wanted to talk to you after the thing about
The after show,
the after show about the Marvel Universe thing. But
we talked about Thanos the other day on one of your podcasts. So.
Yeah, that's what I was going to bring up. But there are some writers out there that understand that kind of storytelling, and there's not enough of them. And I think what they need to do is they need to be the ones to teach the other people who don't know how to do it, how to do it.
A lot of cinematic. I hear Marvel is actually excellent at that at parts.
They've done some very good stuff.
Not everything. Not every movie's perfect or made equally. When I watched Black Panther, even though that was very action oriented, that reminded me of an old 70s or 80s where everything was very layered.
Yes, it was.
You know, you didn't have these superficial characters. Each character had layers upon layers. And also the Marvel characters, they don't offer you superficial characters.
No, they don't.
They tend to offer you characters that have... I haven't seen Thor yet. My boyfriend's really into Thor. And he said, again, there's a lot of layers. And I said, I saw Thor Ragnarok. I said, no, don't watch Ragnarok first. Watch the first Thor and go up.
Yeah.
He said that there's character layers, there's things you have to explore, there's a universe you have to get into. And you have to watch them kind of in order. So with Marvel, it has that thing where you kind of have to deal with these people, with these characters and their motivations. So Marvel is doing a good job with that layered writing.
Yeah.
You know, this is pity Sci-Fi couldn't do better with it. I mean, I'd love to see... Star Wars used to actually have layered writing. But, you know, I think...
And that's really the only way you can make something like a superhero movie or just a space battle thing actually be something grander and more epic in a way, as if you do like what you said, just layer write it.
Well, the action only means something if you're feeling some motivation toward it.
Exactly.
Rather than just, you know, I'm going to go out and do stuff and the end and all is saved. You know, there needs to be something behind it that gives these characters motivation for their journey.
Yeah.
That's why I mentioned Black Panther, because that character was mostly about motivation and his action just supplemented that.
That's right.
But it was all motivation, and there was, you know... But the thing is, with Star Trek, the motion picture, you said they went through a lot of rewrites, and that may have been troublesome for them. But, you know, maybe that made it good for what it was, because...
What they went through, and they came out with that end product, I mean, it was a miracle that it was as good as it was.
Exactly, because... But also that may have helped it, because, think about it, they had this original idea, which is probably nothing like what we saw.
Yeah.
It could have been a whole... I don't know what the original script was.
Well, originally, what they wanted was they were going to meet God. That was the idea that William Shatner wanted to do.
Which became Star Trek 5 in a trash canny sort of way, but...
Yeah, it would have been in a better quality, but that was originally what they started with, was they wanted to make this movie a big, 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 grand, giant movie. And
right, wasn't that what In by Image more or less was?
Sort of like that,
them meeting the creator.
Yeah.
Not a creature looking for its creator, but them meeting a creator.
Yeah.
Creature.
But they said, no, you don't want to do this God thing because it never translates well to audiences.
And that there could have been controversy in the religious community with that at the time.
Yeah. So they had to
still would be, but,
yeah.
You know, but you know, who knows? But you know, Star Trek. So then, but like I said, what they did is they took that and they layered all these colors to it.
Yeah.
So it was still there peripherally, where V'ger was a thing seeking out God.
Yeah.
Which leads to my favorite line in the film, which actually began my own kind of reverse spiritual journey, where Decker says, "We all create God in our own image."
Yeah.
That's why my religious perception is very different from most people, because that was in my core.
Everybody, every single person on Earth has their own. Even it doesn't even matter if they're all part of one religion. Everybody has their own idea of what God is or what it might be.
Jeff, may I be mega controversial with you here? Because I know we're on YouTube, but I'm going to make a mega controversial statement. When people later on would say, "Oh, God created us in our own image," that didn't make sense to me, because I'm still thinking we create God in our own image.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the reverse way, because my first impression of religion was from motion picture, that we create God in our own image.
That's right.
And when I look at it, I constantly see that yes, the thing that people worship looks like them.
Yeah.
That they put their face, their image into that.
Yeah.
So by the time I was 14, I was going around telling thoughtful people, at this point to me, religion is pure narcissism. It's people looking at themselves and wanting themselves to be the most powerful they can be. Now, a couple of times I got in trouble for that, but, you know, my views, of course, kind of measured about how I expressed it. But I see a lot of people who get really into, you know, especially the ugly, bigoted part, as people really seeing themselves as God.
Yeah.
They talk about God as an outside. They're really referring to themselves.
Well, usually the problems that we have in history that dealt with somebody in, you know, in a religious way that did something that created a chaos or something, it was from people that like you said, did think that they were closer to God than everybody else under
Right.
them.
Yeah. This is what the motion picture does to people. It makes you start thinking about these things.
Yeah.
This is why I love this movie. You start thinking these kind of thoughts, and you know, that movie framed a lot of my thinking.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, when people say the motion picture was bad, it's like, I am the motion picture. You know, a lot of my thinking was framed by that.
Yeah.
Maybe I am that thing Beecher created. Whatever. I mean, they evolved, and on the seventh day they made me. You know, like,
and they made me.
You know, whatever. But
like that Tom Jones guy, you know, that one that had everybody drink the Kool-Aid. Basically, they all died there.
You mean Jim Jones?
Jim Jones, yeah, Tom Jones. Jim Jones.
No,
yeah.
I sound like an evangelist, but I'm just saying that, you know.
I'm just saying, I mean, that's an example of somebody who thought they were closer to God than everybody else. So,
right, because, you know, they thought that it was in thy image. They started to think that God was kind of them.
Yeah.
And that's what they call it, playing God. You know, you may not know what this God really is or this creator really is. You know, you don't know if there is one or not.
I mean, V'ger was wrong. I mean, V'ger finds out it wasn't a machine at all. It was the creator. That was his creator. It was.
Right. And, you know, we know Gene Roddenberry's secular humanism is well noted, but, you know, he wasn't dogmatic about his ideas at all. He explored it and explored all over it.
Yeah.
And like I said, if you're a young boy who sees, you know, the beginning of development of religion around you and people just exploring it, and you watch that movie, you're already thinking a little ahead of the game.
Yeah.
You know, of course, I was a very analytical kid. You know, I was always looking into things. So I'm like, okay, I'm getting to that age where people are usually starting to explore religion, and my mother and father were kind of like, you know, we'll let you kind of explore it yourself. So I did it through the motion picture. And I'm kind of like, you know what? I don't want to worship myself as a bigger version. I think I'll just keep watching this show. You know, like, I think maybe the answers that I'm looking for as a young kid might be closer to this.
Yeah.
Is Star Trek my religion? By no means. It's more an instruction manual. You know, it's more like I just look to this as a spring off for my interest in space and science and philosophy and human relationships. It's a springboard.
I mean, the only advice I would give to some young fellow that would come up to me, or, you know, or if I had a child and would say, you know, what religion are we? And I would say, there's a lot of books out there, and my advice to you is, if you want to get involved with religion, keep an open mind, because there's no one book tell all for anything. It's how you interpret it.
Right. And whatever you do, not let anybody convince you there is only one way, because that is the road to one place. Hate.
Yeah.
It's always the road to hate, because, you know, you think your way is the only way. Everybody else you must hate.
Yeah.
Open mind is really the best way. And I think that movie kind of gave you the idea that, you know, it's a concept to think about and to guide you in life rather than absolutes. And I think that they pointed it, because remember, V'ger was wrong, like you said. It wasn't correct about the nature of its own creator.
Yeah.
It assumed it was a machine because it was a machine.
Yeah. We thought that. It's a machine.
In a very logical kind of way.
Yeah.
And that's why I was looking for its creator, because it wanted that ability to leap beyond logic.
Yeah.
Because if it had that human emotion, it would have realized, you know, maybe my creator was actually a human being. Rather than seeing itself as, you know, because again, it's a narcissistic thing. It's seeing, although it's not narcissism because there's no emotion there, but there's this kind of logical sort of ego structure, if you can call ego a logical thing, in the sense that, well, I guess ego is a strong sense of self. You don't have to have emotion for that.
Yeah.
You know, but this idea that because I'm a machine, my God must also be a machine.
Yeah, or a higher machine, or something like that. Some form
Like,
of a machine.
well, like I said, I mean,
Yeah.
V'ger, how do you know you were created by a bowl of pasta?
Yeah, really. I
You
mean,
know,
open mind, teacher.
the flying spaghetti monster, if you know about that whole bit. But
Yeah, I mean, it must be interesting. I mean, from V'ger to look at the Enterprise. I mean, because remember how defensive it got of the Enterprise. You guys inhabit this. You're interfering with V'ger in the same. Likely, we're just like a virus. Like, stay away from the machines.
right,
Get off
and the
Enterprise.
Ilea probe had to kind of be a siphon into that, because the Ilea probe was like, why has the creator not responded?
Yeah,
Every time it said that, these things going across Earth, like, we're going to attack it if we don't get our information.
yeah. So
And
you
it's
guys
like,
are messing with our machines. It's get off the Enterprise. You don't belong here. It's like.
maybe that's the whole theme of the motion picture. In a way, if you want to boil it down, it's a parent-child dialogue. Because, V'ger is a child. Spock described it as a child evolving, learning. And when his parents won't communicate with it, it kind of throws a tantrum. And Bones even mentions that.
Yeah.
That your child is throwing a tantrum.
Yeah.
And it is. I mean, it's like, Mommy, Daddy, why aren't I getting what I want? You're not responding.
Taking the ship and shaking it. Give me what I want.
Right. So it's kind of like it's perceiving its creator as a neglectful parent.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a parent-child story in a way.
Yeah.
But in a very esoteric, cerebral kind of way. It's not a Disney movie version of it.
No.
It's not, like you said, it's not Seven Dwarves and Bambi and Snow White. It's dealing with the Star Trek universe.
Yeah.
And boy, every time I associate myself with a motion picture, my thoughts grow in these huge, vast ways.
But the thing about the motion picture is there's no way they'd ever came to a resolution with finding out and having the crew survive if they didn't have their own human emotions, their own human frailties to draw on to relate to this V'ger.
Right, exactly. That's what the human adventure is, this beginning.
It's like the human condition was a guide to help them feel their way to solving the problem, and that's how it ended.
Right.
Because if they were just machines trying to solve a machine problem, it wouldn't have worked.
Because V'ger couldn't do it. If they'd sent some robot about to deal with V'ger, it would have been as bad off as V'ger.
That's right.
Even with all the sensors and everything, it wouldn't have been able to, deal with all the things the crew could, because they were all going through their own things on the ship.
That's right.
Dissolution of relationships between Decker and Ilea.
Yeah.
Kirk's love affair with the Enterprise.
Yeah.
Spock's, again, recurring need to rediscover his humanity.
Yeah.
And then realizing that he couldn't survive on total logic.
That's right.
That, like V'ger, he needed that human. And Spock did have a lot of emotional reactions in this, didn't he? He was crying on the bridge.
He's like very connected to the same story V'ger's going through.
Exactly. He's kind of going through a reverse V'ger, where he's kind of coming out of logic and going. Well, actually, it's not reverse V'ger. It's flat out V'ger's story, pretty much.
Yeah.
And, although Spock had already been through it, but he was going through
Spock,
it again.
he really wants to help V'ger out, I think, because he felt a kinship with him. Because he said we're like brothers. I weep for him like I would for a brother. It's because he sympathizes with what V'ger's going through. He wants to help him or help V'ger understand what it's missing.
Again, there's that romantic element. You see that basically in the end of the day, this may sound, I suppose, corny to some people, but in the end, the movie is kind of one about empathy and love, because the crew all have to deal with understanding each other and understanding a new ship they're not really that familiar with. It keeps blowing up on them half the time. And Spock, Spock's moved to tears, but then, if I recall, he's actually kind of laughing in the sick bay.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there was a scene, but they don't put that in the director's cut. They took that out. But the thing of it is that these emotions were given out logically. You know what I'm saying? Logically, yes, it was logical to cry about V'ger, because he was going through the same thing. So there was logic behind the tears. There was logic behind the laughter, because he found out I was a fool all along for thinking that logic was the way to.
Right, he's saying to Kirk, I should have known.
Yeah, I should have known. It's like it was logical for him to laugh because it was so humorous that he was so misled.
Right, and like I said, Spock was realizing, logic is not the purging of all emotion.
No.
It's how you view life.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a mistake the Vulcans are making. Maybe they're thinking that the key to self-knowledge is the elimination of emotion.
Yeah.
And the total embrace of logic, where logic is a concept that functions to temper emotion.
Yeah.
And that in order to live in life, Vulcans can think logically, but that goes back to that Serenite thing.
Yeah.
Enterprise.
Isn't that what Sarek Surak rather was trying to teach.
Right, and that's what the Saranites were trying to deal with. It's like, yeah, Sarek wasn't telling us to purge our emotions. He was trying to tell us how to temper it with logic.
That's right.
And Vulcans went the other extreme with it, evidently. And Spock was relearning that lesson in the motion picture.
And Spock learned that lesson, probably one of the few that did, that learned that lesson you can have emotion and logic, just temper, and not go completely one way or the other.
And the one thing about the motion picture I noticed is interesting, maybe a lot of people don't like this aspect, it didn't really put together the Spock, Bones, Kirk triad as much as the TOS did.
Because each one was kind of going through their own character arc.
Yeah, Bones was almost kind of distant figure in this movie in a way.
Yeah, he was, yeah.
The other movies did kind of bring a lot of that back, but Bones was almost kind of a peripheral figure. And the action was around Kirk. Bones dealing with Kirk. Spock dealing with Kirk.
That's why this movie felt like a pilot to, a series, because it would be like they were setting...
It was changing the dynamic.
The end of the movie would have set the whole series up to continue for another 5-year mission. We would have got all that back in the later episodes.
It makes sense that because there were a crew that had been disparate. They had been off and doing other things. And then in the motion picture, they were all kind of coming back together, but their relationships were scattered. It's been too long. The relationships weren't established anymore. They were kind of diminished by time in the river. And then when you get to the end of it, again, you start seeing that Bones and Kirk and Spock triad kind of coming back together a little bit.
Yeah. And that's where it leaves you off. And I think that's what a lot of fans didn't like, because they wanted to see that from the ending from the beginning. But it logically wouldn't have worked that way if it was, 2.5 years later.
It gushy to say that this movie was about evolution and love, basically, at the end of the day.
Evolution of, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot at the end of the day when you really digest the whole.
I'm trying to break this thing down because the motion picture delivers a lot of ideas.
It would be arrogant to just, like when Hollywood puts like a label on like drama or science fiction or comedy.
Well, that would be too
simple. Going on in this than just one label.
That's why I use the word love and evolution. Drama, sci-fi. I'm not going to put because those labels are categories.
Yeah.
Which is salesmanship. I'm not trying to sell this idea.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, what is this movie trying to express?
Yeah.
Because when I watch a movie, I don't always feel like I'm getting a sales pitch, Yeah. A lot of people who are younger than me, again, that snide thing that I mentioned, will watch a movie like Transformers and say, they're just trying to sell us toys.
Yeah.
But like I said, to me, a movie is basically a visual book. It's trying to tell a story.
Mm-hmm. I
have never seen a movie where you see some robot flying around with a big word that says saying, "Please buy me in the store for $6.99." I've never actually seen that. So until I see that, I'm not going to say, well, okay, if you peel back the layers, maybe people who designed this were trying. This is like Harlan Ellison. Remember we talked about that? Yeah. Him saying, Gene Roddenberry's trying to sell you all this junk, and it's like, it's that's cynicism.
He was looking at Gene through a very, very narrow.
Yes, lens. Like a very narrow sigmoidoscope kind of thing. And I think a lot of younger people have become little Harlan Ellisons in the sense that they may have talent, but they think that they're just trying to sell us stuff.
Yeah.
And, to me, that's very cynical. Maybe because I'm not that cynical a person, I look at the situation and say, well, no. If the motion picture is selling anything, it's selling a rebirth. Because it's a rebirth of the Star Trek universe, They're bringing this back from this world of syndication to this movie. And the movie deals with the idea of evolution and rebirth.
Yeah.
The Beecher's being reborn. The show is being reborn. I remember there was a big premiere where people were dressed up as all those aliens.
Yeah.
And true. I was going to finish this off with a little bit of talk about the merchandising of this film. And they really pushed this one a lot. But they pushed it toward kids. And it's not really a movie directed at kids.
And the toys were crap.
Toys varied, okay? And I've had some of the toys.
That damn bridge, shit.
Well, you want to either first or go to the other stuff. You want to start better or go back worse.
The only thing worth keeping out of that were the figures.
And they made an Enterprise who could actually change it on the ships. The piano was really good. I'd like to have it, but...
It was okay. Yeah, that wasn't bad, yeah.
Okay. I guess we have to... The figures were okay. Some of the bigger figures turned green because they were poorly painted or something, because I had the Ilea figure.
I got Spock and he's green.
I've heard the McDonald's Happy Meal. I've heard the McDonald's Happy Meal boxes for that they've aged a lot better than the Ilea figure. So
Yeah.
and they were Happy Meal things with Klingons all over them and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I guess we want to kind of on the cool down deal with the bridge. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like half a
What would you
bridge,
call
sort
it? Would
of.
you call it a vinyl or a plastic? What was it? What do you say?
Well, from the look of it, I haven't personally seen one out of the box, but it looks like stuff that you get sandwiches in at the store.
Yeah, and
Like
it
a
cut my
thin, chintzy plastic.
it cut my friggin' thumb when I took it out of the box because the floor is very thin and it's very sharp on the edges.
Yeah, it's like packing material. It isn't.
Yeah, and boy, didn't that hurt because that went right under my fingernail when I pulled it out and it cut right under the fingernail. You know how those cuts, like, they hurt, they sting, they never, it just
Yeah, you don't want to get your nails bent. It's not.
Yeah.
They bleed inside and they hurt for a long time. And
So when I pulled it out of the box, and the box was flat because there's two sections. You got a top section and a bottom section. And what you do to connect those together is double-sided tape. They give you these little stickers.
Yeah, the little double-sided tape you put on it, and tape gets dust on it, and it gets brittle easily.
For some reason, that tape didn't stick very well to that kind of plastic, whatever the hell it was, and it just kept falling apart.
Yeah.
And I shoved it under the bed, and I laid on the bed, and the mattress must have went right on top of it, and it cracked it right down the middle.
Yep, and you've told me you don't have any regrets about that per se.
No, I got that. That didn't even last a year.
I'm almost thinking of young Jeff on there, seeing that, say, "Oh, thank goodness, I hated that thing."
Yeah. I wouldn't even buy it as a collector's item. It was so worthless. I mean,
because when I saw it, and
accurate. It wasn't
they put
even
a hatch on it for no reason, just to have it.
It's not even accurate because they got a bridge door on it that goes into outer space like they had on that gruesome in the naked.
We're gonna have to do the naked time now at some point, okay? Yeah. Because who would put a hatch right at the front of a bridge?
Yeah. The only thing I could think is they were planning on making an addition to connect to that. But, like, what addition? There's no ready room.
But instead, this crew gets intoxicated and just blows himself out of this hatch on the bridge for no reason.
Yeah, I mean,
they've never been there.
Maybe they were going to
make the dumbest thing to put in a bridge.
Maybe they were going to make a shuttlecraft that was supposed to connect to that door on the side of the bridge or something, and for your figure.
You know how Star Trek manufacturers are generations, which probably in your next one we're going to be doing.
Yeah.
They put these prototype figures out of that one, and maybe that motion picture bridge was a prototype bridge they had, and they just didn't want to redo it. So,
yeah,
I'm sure you could have done way better with cardboard and heavier plastic at that time on your own. Anyway,
with the skill level I got now, I could redo that bridge. It would look more accurate, and it would have lights in it.
It wouldn't kill you.
Yeah, it wouldn't kill you. It'd be safe, and I would use actual balsa wood, and nice.
Exactly.
And it would hold together.
I mean, even though I never made a bridge, I could probably do that bridge pretty easy.
Yeah.
You just get the blueprints, follow the pattern, a little balsa wood, a little decent styrene that wouldn't cut your hand.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be that hard. Sculpey, get a whole bunch of 6, 7 packages of Sculpey there. You're most beautiful place.
That's right.
I mean, with Sculpey, it would be a breeze.
Yeah.
You get all the shapes that you wanted. That wouldn't be a hard bridge to make, really. Yeah. And even scale to those figures.
I was really disappointed with that when I saw it. I mean, because on the box, the picture in the catalog, it looked like it was, really nice. But once you take it out of that box, it's like, what the hell is this? Is this really a
wonderful world of false advertising?
Yeah. And boy, what a letdown that was. I mean, God. I don't know.
Well, didn't you say that was kind of the scale with the Star Wars figures, too?
Those figures for the motion picture were slightly smaller than the Star Wars figures. I remember because I had my Luke Skywalker figure and I had Ilea, and they were like really.
Admiral Ilea.
Admiral Ilea. Yeah, they're a little bit
3 times in rank in that movie. Yeah. Apparently, the figure.
Yeah.
Unless that was the original plan to make her an admiral.
Yeah, I don't know.
That was weird, the admiral outfit. Because I think I have it. Didn't you give me one of the Ilea?
I think so. Yeah.
It had that gray admiral. They put her in. That's weird. I mean, even the tall one is just the probe. So
yeah.
And Playmates did it was a probe. It wasn't that weird admiral uniform. So
yeah.
Anyway, is there anything more you wanted to add about the motion picture? I know it's a long thing anyway, but
no, it's just that that's my favorite of the 6 films they did with the TOS crew, and I wish though that more people that criticize it would really honestly sit down and take another look at it, because the issues they point out that's wrong with the film, I don't see it, because when I watch the movie, I know Harv Bennett called it the tone poem. He calls it Star Trek the tone poem. That's, like I said, you guys got used to watching Star Wars. You watched it over and over again, and then you get onto another kind of science fiction, and you expected the same level of science fiction, and it's not. You guys are looking at two different sides of a coin here. It was never meant to be taken as Star Wars, and I think a lot of people mistaken, that the reason why it wasn't very good was because there wasn't enough action in it, which is why they approached Star Trek 2 in that kind of Star Wars kind of
again
action.
The audience is very different. I don't know. It's like I said, but everybody approaches movies differently.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm one of those weird people. There's movies that people love that I just don't see what they love about it. I'm sure you are the same way. And then movies people don't like, and I don't really see what's not to like about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't say to a person who didn't like the motion picture, well, you're wrong for not liking it, I don't like you. I wouldn't be like that. It would be more like, have you seen the movie in a while? Like you should go back and kind of revisit it and then tell me about it. That sort of thing. Because maybe you watched it as a teenager, like you're expecting a Star Wars and not getting it.
Yeah.
And not being in that place at 15, 16, whatever, to really get it. But you go back to it at 40. Maybe you're a person who's had a child, or you've had a wife, or you've experienced death. If you go back to the motion picture after all that, you might get a very different thing from it.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's a more grown-up kind of thing. It's
There's a lot of films that are like that when you age, the way you see that film ages with you.
Right. Like I said, I can't see testosterone-fueled stereotypical high schooler getting much out of the motion picture.
No.
It's made by and about people who've kind of lived life.
Yeah. And
maybe because some of us might appeal to us at a young age. I mean, I was around a lot of older people when I was younger. It might have appealed to me on that level.
Yeah.
But some younger people are just a lot younger, I guess. I don't know. it was just old-headed, and it dealt with me in that way. But, so like I said, the motion picture isn't kid stuff, in a way. It goes back to the Cage thing of cerebral storytelling. And I think it's misunderstood. I wouldn't say it's underrated. People usually like it on an adult level. They usually appreciate how much successful it was. I mean, it launched the whole Star Trek movie. I won't use the word franchise. I don't like the way that's being used. Sorry, I can't do that. It makes it sound like a McDonald's franchise. I don't. The whole Star Trek movie series.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's not. I was going to use another word I don't like either.
Well, here's the thing. If Star Trek the Motion Picture was so bad, then why did they do 5 other films after it? Okay, obviously they knew there was money to be made there. They made their money. That was the most money they ever made.
George Takei put it well in the 25th anniversary series.
That's right.
They said it would be the only one, but it made a lot of money, so they made another one.
Yeah, and if it hadn't been for that, they probably wouldn't have made it. So who knows?
So it did drive it, but
yeah,
I really don't see Star Trek as just a franchise. That implies the movies they're trying to sell things.
Yeah.
To me, if you approach Star Trek as a franchise, you take everything Star Trek is out of a context.
I guess when people go to the toy store and they see figures and stuff like that, they kind of make that connection that maybe things being made in Hollywood are franchises. Like, you got the Marvel stuff, the figures and the space.
I just philosophically, I wouldn't put Star Trek in that category. It's a different thing to me, but.
Yeah, but and really, in a way, it seems like anytime they ever made toys with Star Trek until recently, they never really worked, did it? It wasn't until
got close, pretty much. They did a good job. But I would say up until Playmates, they were kind of working out a lot of kinks.
A lot.
the Star Trek 3. Actually, can I ask you a question? Would it be appropriate to kind of do a whole thing on toys?
We could. I mean, Netflix kind of did a little bit of that, with toys.
Well, like our personal history and what toys we like, or would that be too cynical?
You mean we're talking about how toys would be later, or?
Well, no, Star Trek's just a franchise kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, that'd be interesting to talk about, because I know a lot of people that like Star Trek probably bought some of the toys, and I'm sure they like to hear how other people view them and talk about it. It's part of Star Trek. So.
Okay. Excellent. And like I said, we can maybe be able to do a little show and tell with that.
Yeah.
You know, because I see one of your toys hanging right behind you, the NX-01. So
Yeah, the Art Asylum one, yeah.
I think that's a toy, or is that a collector ship? I don't know what they're
It
calling
can be a collector's ship, or it can be a toy. Depends how you want to play with it.
We'll get into that a little later. But anyway, with motion picture, boy, we really get into these philosophical tracks about filmmaking and love and science and the nature of religion. And motion picture, no wonder when I was 7 years old, I thought I understood life and it worked for like that 1 minute. And then Andre's like, you know.
Yeah.
But at 7 years old, everything's like goldfish memory. It just, you know. But like I said, it all worked for like a moment. I'm like, I got it. What's going on? I got it. It all makes sense. Oh no, it's gone. I'll just go living life now. But
that's why you got to walk around with a notepad, because that's what I do when because I like writing and stuff. So any idea that come to mind, I hurry up and write it down so I don't forget it.
I'm glad you didn't see my writing when I was 7.
Yeah, but
I wasn't staying within the lines.
Oh, you like to be neat when you write?
Well, when I was 7 years old, I was running like a 7-year-old. Okay.
Oh, well, my handwriting is like chicken scratch, because they say I look like a doctor when I write, because they can't read anything.
Oh yeah, that doctor writing is like Sanskrit. It's hard to read. It's like It's like it's like dictation or something. Yeah. But with me, you know how kids sometimes write. I was just learning to write at that point. I wasn't sitting there, saying, "Oh, the moon's aligned with Pluto" and all this stuff. I wasn't writing like high school level stuff here. I wasn't a baby genius. I was just a normal 7-year-old with the age appropriate writing ability. And the thing I was thinking, I didn't even know how to spell some of it.
Yeah.
I mean, a kid can think about certain things, but don't know how to spell it on paper.
It's not important for a rough draft to know your punctuation and spelling. You can iron that stuff out way later.
This is a weird story, but I wanted to bring this up because it reminded me of this years ago. Now, this was drug related, but Paul McCartney from the Beatles said that he didn't like taking LSD, but he did once, and he swore that he had the answer to the universe right there or whatever, but he said, I better write this down, like you said. And when he was over this LSD experience, he looked at what he wrote, and it just was a piece of paper that said, there are 7 levels.
The 7 levels.
He said, that was my idea? He said, that's why I decided to take LSD, because there are 7 levels?
That's
it. Random existential statement.
7 levels.
That's what he wrote down. There are 7 levels. And he said, that was this great idea I had.
It's like remember that happened with Barkley or something, or who was it? Or Bones, actually, when Spock's brain, remember, he had that thing, and he says, oh, I know, I can remember it. And he goes, oh, it was like child's play. And he's like, oh, I can't.
Right, because he had that teacher that was making him think, oh, a child could do this. A child could do this. And then he's like forgetting.
Yeah.
Like, boy, I guess a child couldn't do it then, couldn't he? I wanted to ask you, we've done TOS.
Yeah.
But is it worth going into and filling the plot holes of Spock's brain?
Oh, boy, is it?
They're a mile wide, really.
We've been doing this for 3 hours on this one movie. I mean, it might be that much for Spock's brain.
Spock's brain is a 7-hour marathon. Yeah. I mean, I don't mean to sound cynical, but my goodness, as you get older, the plot holes in that just get wider and wider and wider.
I don't know. I would really love to pick the mind of the writer that put that out and say, what were you on then when you wrote that?
I mean, the plot could have worked on a very different level, like a totally different level than what they did with it.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't just throw characters out there and situations out there and just expect them to all resolve themselves magically.
Yeah.
But, with a motion picture, I will say that everything kind of fit together very well.
Yeah.
To its credit. I mean, there are a few little weird things like, and I just got to get a kick out of them. Like, why did Eileen probably take a shower? I mean,
if the shower's so hot, why wasn't there steam coming out of that?
They're taking a shower. I'm like, and then she appears in that outfit. It's like, so she was taking a shower and changing into whatever that was. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe this was an unclean probe that had probe stuff all over it and they needed to clean it off, I guess. I don't know. I don't know. But and then they had to tell you where she was too, because that computer had to recite everything.
Yeah.
So, like I said, a few little weird technical flaws. The basic plot of the movie held together really well.
Mm-hmm.
Although I have to admit, even for the Blu-ray, I would have kept that computer voice the way it was in the director's cut. Because that was the only aspect that kind of irked me because it more jarred me.
Yeah.
If the movie was loud, there was a lot of like beeping noise. I would say, okay, but there's this quiet and then this.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if it had an alarm clock like that?
Oh God. Well, you know, I had an alarm clock that looks like the shuttle from Next Generation.
Yeah, I remember
And
seeing those.
the alarm was the klaxon, and that was so loud. Well, one night I went to my parents' house for Sunday dinner, and somehow that friggin' alarm went off. And for 6 hours, that alarm kept going off and off. And when I got home, I heard it. I was like, where is that coming from? I said, oh, no, it's that clock. And I'm thinking, I'm living in an apartment, and the neighbors must be like, what's going on? How come that's going on? You know, so I went in the house, and I went to the bedroom, and that stupid alarm kept going off, and I shut it off. And that thing was loud, that friggin' alarm clock.
Could you imagine if they made like a little, like an alarm clock that looked like that, and they had that start, that computer voice, wake up.
That alarm.
Location bedroom.
That would wake the dead, that friggin' thing. Oh,
yeah. I know it's supposed to be like a 747, but geez, whoever's at 747s are emotionally satisfying.
It wasn't even that loud in the cockpit in the 747. It wasn't that loud.
Yeah, okay, so maybe they did overdo the majesty of that one part. But like I said, I take weird computers any day over whatever you see a lot now. I just, you know. Yeah. And again, I don't want to sound like I'm an old fart who's out of date and overly conservative or anything, because not everything was better years ago, believe me. But I'm just saying that, you know, you can have all the great grandeur of special effects and still have good layered writing.
Yeah.
You know, it's that whole you had one job syndrome. Do it. So, you know, that's our review for the motion picture.
Yep.
I'll see you all in 2019, right?
Yeah, it's 2019 coming up.
So we'll see you in the new year. Happy New Year, everybody. And over the course of the new year, I'm going to gradually refit this a little bit. So this is going to be the last podcast that's going to look exactly like this, especially on my end. So see you in 2019, everybody. Live long and prosper.
Bye-bye.
They say the human condition is just beginning. The human adventure is just beginning. Trek Prime's adventure is just beginning. See you next year.